Chapter 1166. When Yu Lily heard that, she knew that the words were directed at her. Looking down at the table, Yu Lily subconsciously clasped her hands together. He's eating well and sleeping soundly. He's in good shape. Shouldn't I be happy to hear that? But, for some reason, Yu Lily felt an indescribable pain in her heart. So, after breaking up with me, he will be in better shape? How is that possible? Yu Lily didn't believe it. But, she saw Qiao Ziqing's relaxed expression. She didn't seem worried about her son at all. Instead, she looked very relaxed and happy. Old Mrs. Shen looked at her and said, "Is that so? That's great. I was worried that something would happen to your son. After all, the engagement between your family and mine hasn't been cancelled. In the future, our families will become in-laws. I don't want my granddaughter to marry a cripple." Her words were so direct that it was embarrassing. Yu Lily felt as if a knife had cut into her heart. In that moment, she suddenly felt that everything around her had nothing to do with her. The engagement between Shen Manting and O Ming hasn't been cancelled. So, their engagement hasn't been cancelled? After what happened between Shen Manting and Shen Luoan, their engagement hasn't been cancelled. Yu Lily found it hard to believe. But, looking at the expressions of Qiao Ziqing and O Huijin, she knew. It was true. Qiao Ziqing was a little embarrassed and said, "Grandma, how can you say that? Our son, is your son really a cripple?" Old Mrs. Shen looked at her and asked sharply. Qiao Ziqing's words were stuck in her throat. She didn't know whether to say yes or no. O Ming's condition was indeed not good. Not only was he blind, but his hand was also fractured. But, how could his parents accept the word cripple? When Yu Lily saw that, she quietly reached out and tugged on old Mrs. Shen's sleeve. In a low voice, she said, "Grandma, O Ming is fine." "What do you mean by fine? Is it really as you said? He can't see?" Old Mrs. Shen didn't have the slightest intention of hiding her voice. "Isn't he blind? What's the difference between that and a cripple? Our granddaughter can't marry someone like that." Old Mrs. Shen. A young man's voice came from the second floor. This voice was cold and displeased, and it made one's heart tremble. Yu Lily's heart fluttered. She looked in the direction of the voice and saw O Ming in his pajamas. At that moment, O Ming's hand was in a cast hanging from his neck. His eyes were looking straight ahead. He looked empty and lifeless, like a puppet. "If you have come to see if I am crippled, you have seen it. I am blind and crippled, as you know. You may go back." As for Shen Manting, what gave her the confidence to believe that I would marry a woman like you, who has ruined our family's reputation? I, O Ming, can't afford to be cuckolded by my brother. Yu Lily hadn't said a word since she entered the house. O Ming knew that old Mrs. Shen hadn't come alone. When he heard her call herself their granddaughter, he naturally assumed that the person who had come was Shen Manting. Chapter 1167. Please go back. It's the new year, and no one will be happy if things go sour. As she spoke, she groped her way downstairs. Such a scene was shocking to the eye. Qiao Ziqing immediately stood up and wanted to walk in O Ming's direction, but she was one step too late. Yu Lily's footsteps were fast as she ran in that direction. O Ming couldn't see, but he could vaguely guess who it was from the sound of her footsteps. Just as Yu Lily was about to reach him, O Ming stopped. "Why are you here?" O Ming asked. It was obvious that he had recognized Yu Lily. Qiao Ziqing and O Huijin looked at each other and saw different emotions in each other's eyes. Old Mrs. Shen was still sitting on the sofa, drinking tea calmly. She looked at Yu Lily on the second floor with a look of admiration in her eyes. Brave. Not bad. Yu Lily didn't say anything. She walked up to him and grabbed his uninjured arm without a word and pulled him forward. O Ming's footsteps were frozen in place. He didn't move an inch. "I thought I made it clear yesterday that we broke up. Yu Lily, what's the point of doing this?" He didn't wait for Yu Lily to speak before he turned to the side and shouted, "Mom, didn't we agree not to let her in?" Hearing that, Xiao Ziqing's heart was filled with doubt. Could O Ming be serious? O Ming didn't look like he was faking it. Why did he suddenly break up? Xiao Ziqing wasn't the only one who was curious. Even Yu Lily herself was baffled. O Ming! Yu Lily shouted. Why are you saying something like that for no reason? You have to give me a reason. I didn't meet you yesterday, so don't even think of escaping today. You have to give me an explanation, or I won't leave. Yes, for no reason. No one would be willing to accept such a situation. Even O Ming himself wouldn't easily accept such a sudden breakup. Could he tell her that he had thought it through and didn't want to hold her up any longer? Could he tell her that he didn't want her to be a cripple for the rest of her life, and that she should find another way out and find another man? If he said that, Yu Lily would be even more unwilling to break up with him. O Ming knew her very well. Yu Lily was a good girl, and it was precisely because of this that he could not delay her. It was very likely that he would be like this for the rest of his life, blind, forever in need of others to take care of him, unable to work, becoming a burden to his family and his parents, forever living in darkness, never to see the light of day. Furthermore, Xiao Ziqing's opinion of Yu Lily was huge. It wasn't something that could be changed overnight. He couldn't afford it, and he didn't want Yu Lily to compromise because of him. Hearing Yu Lily's words, O Ming's heart tightened. He wanted to pull his hand back, but Yu Lily's hands were holding him tightly. O Ming couldn't push her away with just one hand. He simply let her hug him and said coldly, "A man doesn't want a woman who is greedy for money and vanity." Isn't that a reason? Yu Lily felt a stab in her heart. She looked at O Ming in disbelief. Are you talking about me? Is there someone else besides you? Chapter 1168. Yu Lily's voice was filled with disbelief. She unconsciously loosened her grip on O Ming. O Ming took the opportunity to pull his hand back and said, "I'm denouncing my ex-girlfriend." She did all the hypocritical things she could. On the surface, she treated me impeccably, but in reality, she was willing to do anything to marry me. Outsiders must think that you're loyal, but do you think I don't know your true colors? You want to marry me, then use all means to get a divorce and get a large share of the alimony, right? The more Yu Lily listened, the more unreasonable she found it. Such a reason, such a reason. Nonsense. Yu Lily roared. O Ming, you're crazy. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you think I care about your family's money? If you don't care, why won't you break up with me? If you don't care, why are you still pestering me? O Ming retorted. His tone was urgent. My mother is right. Orphans like you are hypocritical. You grew up without parents, so you don't know anything about relationships. Xiao Ziqing was caught off guard. She was stunned. O Huajin was equally baffled. No one had expected that in just a few days, the relationship between O Ming and Yu Lily would change so much. Apart from O Ming himself, no one could understand what he meant. Yu Lily's body trembled with anger. She looked at O Ming, and even her breathing became rapid. O Ming took advantage of the situation and said, "You were with me because of this from the beginning, weren't you? You were with me because I was rich and healthy. Now that I'm disabled, the most important thing." Slap. A loud slap interrupted O Ming's words. O Ming's head was buzzing. It was as if a swarm of flies were flying around his ears. Xiao Ziqing's eyes widened and she shouted, "You be *tch. How dare you hit my son?" As she said that, she flew forward. O Ming laughed coldly. "Are you angry because your secret has been exposed? Yu Lily, aren't you very tolerant? Now you're..." Slap. Another vicious slap landed on O Ming's face. Neither side of his face was spared. O Ming's head was dizzy, and his body swayed. Yu Lily didn't expect O Ming to be so fragile. The wounds on both sides of O Ming's cheeks, which were wrapped in gauze, quickly oozed blood. Looking at his wobbly body, Yu Lily subconsciously wanted to go forward and hold him, but she was pushed away harshly. Yu Lily was caught off guard and stumbled. Qiao Ziqing's anxious voice could be heard. She cried out to O Ming, "Son." O Ming's head buzzed, and he barely managed to steady himself. Qiao Ziqing supported him. His surroundings were murky, and he felt a little dizzy. His heart ached as if it was being sliced into pieces. In the darkness, O Ming could clearly feel the tears seeping from the corner of his eyes. He laughed coldly and said with some sadness, "Do you see that? I can't even avoid a woman's slap now. Do you fancy a man like that? How dare you say it's not for the money? You Lily, you are so hypocritical." Yu Lily's heart had originally felt sorry for him, but now it was all gone. This man, this kind of man. She must be blind to have fallen in love with this kind of man. She should have seen through it a long time ago. Was the lesson in the nightclub and the hospital not deep enough? Chapter 1169. It couldn't be changed, no matter what she did, no matter how much effort she put in, or how infatuated she was. O Ming seemed to believe that she had ulterior motives. It had happened once, twice, and this was already the third time. O Ming, I must have been King blind. Yu Lily didn't cry. Her eyes were filled with determination and desolation. She looked at the pitiful man in front of her and laughed coldly. "Remember what you said today, O Ming. From now on, I won't come looking for you again. You'd better not come begging me. Otherwise, I'll despise you just like you despised me today. You'd better not give me that chance." With that, Yu Lily turned around and quickly walked down the stairs. Faced with O Huijin's meaningful gaze, Yu Lily's heart ached. She quickly walked to the sofa, picked up her handbag, and ran out the door. Once she was out the door, Yu Lily's mood was surprisingly calm. There were no waves of emotions that she had imagined, no overflowing sorrow that she had imagined. Instead, there was an indescribable calmness. She couldn't even shed a tear. Yu Lily stood at the door, waiting for the old lady to come out. She didn't know what the old lady was doing inside. After a few minutes, she came out. When she saw that Yu Lily was waiting for her, the old lady went up to her and said, "Child, you're a good child." When Yu Lily heard that, she tried her best to smile at old Mrs. Shen, but her muscles were tense. She couldn't force out a smile at all. Old Mrs. Shen looked at Yu Lily and reached out to gently push her hair back. "If you can't bring yourself to smile, then don't. Let's go back." "Okay." Yu Lily lowered her gaze and led the old lady out to hail a taxi. At that moment, a taxi stopped. It had been busy, but now it was empty. Yu Lily and the old lady waited for the person in the taxi to get out. Unexpectedly, they saw a familiar face. Wen Fenglin was a little surprised to see Yu Lily there. Yu Lily greeted, "Uncle Wen." Wen Fenglin nodded his head and smiled. Two deep dimples appeared on both sides of his cheeks. He looked very kind and benevolent. He looked at Yu Lily and was about to speak when his gaze inadvertently landed on the old lady beside Yu Lily. He froze. When old Mrs. Shen saw Wen Fenglin, she paused for a moment as well. Her murky eyes shone with a sharp light as she asked, "It's you? You know each other?" Yu Lily was surprised. She looked at the old lady and then at Wen Fenglin. Why does it feel like the relationship between them isn't very good? When Wen Fenglin saw old Mrs. Shen, the smile on his face disappeared. He asked, "When did you come to Kingstown?" "As for the imperial capital." Old Mrs. Shen looked at Wen Fenglin. Her face darkened and she laughed mirthlessly. "What? Are you going to pick me up after I ask? Or are you going to treat me to a meal? You haven't eaten?" Wen Fenglin asked with surprise. "Why don't we forget it?" Old Mrs. Shen looked at him and laughed mirthlessly. "If you treat me to a meal, I'm afraid my lifespan will be shortened." With that, she pulled Yu Lily to open the door of the taxi and said, "Lily, let's go." Before Yu Lily had time to digest the relationship between them, old Mrs. Shen had already pulled her into the car. Yu Lily turned her head and smiled at Wen Fenglin. She looked apologetic. The old lady got the driver to drive off. When Feng Lin watched as the taxi drove away, his eyes were cold and desolate. Chapter 1170. The taxi quickly disappeared. When Feng Lin turned and walked back to the O residence, he pressed the doorbell, but it took a long time for the person inside to open the door. The person who opened the door was Xiao Ziqing. Her eyes were red, and she looked very sad. When she saw Feng Lin, she started yelling, "You said that Yu Lily was a good child. Do you know what that woman did? She hit my son. She made my son's face bleed. You and old O must be blind. This kind of woman," sob. He couldn't continue and said, "We must hurry and persuade Xiao O to go to the hospital. He lost so much blood, I hope he doesn't get sick from the beating." She quickly led Feng Lin up to the second floor. When they got there, they realized that the door was locked from the inside. Xiao Ziqing knocked on the door, but there was no response. Inside, O Ming was lying on the bed. O Huijin was looking at him from the side. His gaze was deep. His eyes were the same as O Ming's, and they carried a penetrating sharpness. He looked at his son on the bed and said meaningfully, "You've grown up. There are many things that parents shouldn't interfere with, but what you did today was too much. You were the one who provoked her, and now you're the one who insulted her. Why did you do that?" O Ming didn't open his eyes when he heard that. In a muffled voice, he said, "You don't like her, do you? Now that I've broken up with her, shouldn't you be happy? That's the only reason? I thought you said that to chase her away because you didn't want to hold up this child's future." When O Huijin said that, he kept his eyes on O Ming. Indeed, when he saw O Ming's desolate expression, he knew he was right. The child's temperament was like his. O Huijin had probably thought it through. However, even if it was him, it was impossible for him to say such hurtful words. Just as Yu Lily had said, it would be difficult to salvage the situation in the future. This child really didn't leave any way out for himself. "You'll regret it," O Huijin said bluntly. When O Ming heard that, the regret in his heart had already swept over the sky and the earth. Yes, he would regret it. O Ming was already very, very regretful. But, could he regret it? Was there any room for regret now? Yu Lily was still young, only 25 years old. Such a good girl shouldn't spend the rest of her life on a cripple. Even O Ming himself couldn't see a future for him. He couldn't afford to gamble. His head was getting dizzier and dizzier. He felt as if his head was being crushed by something, and his cheeks were hot. But, O Ming didn't dare say it out loud. If he complained that he wasn't feeling well, Xiao Ziqing wouldn't let Yu Lily off. But now, O Ming couldn't help it. His head hurt, and gradually, everything around him seemed to be getting further and further away. Yu Lily took old Mrs. Shen out for dinner. When they returned to the hotel, they saw Shenjilia sitting on the sofa eating beef noodles with a resentful look on his face. When he saw them coming up, he glared at Yu Lily and then continued to eat. He said with jealousy and hatred, "You two went out to play without me. You are so mean." Chapter 1171. When Shenjilia heard that, he turned his head away with his bowl of beef noodles in his hands. After Yu Lily sat in the hotel for a while, Shenjilia suggested taking old Mrs. Shen to the nearby park and plaza that were very Kingstown style. As the host, Yu Lily naturally introduced them to a lot of local customs and stories. After walking around, it was not until 2 in the afternoon that everyone felt hungry. After finding a place to eat, they played for the rest of the afternoon. It was not until dark that they returned to the hotel to rest. After dinner, Yu Lily said she had to work and went home after saying goodbye to old Mrs. Shen. Yu Lily took out the key and opened the door. When she entered and saw the familiar furnishings, her originally tense mood suddenly relaxed. Home. Finally home. Although there was no so-called family or relatives in this home, it was the only place in the world where she could find a sense of security. It was good to be back. Yu Lily found herself a set of pajamas and then went into the bathroom. When the hot water sprinkled down from the top of her head, Yu Lily's body relaxed even more. After taking a shower and washing her clothes, Yu Lily applied a facial mask that she was usually reluctant to use. After sticking it on her face, she turned on the digital screen and held a pen to find a way to draw. As she drew, half an hour passed without her knowing it. It was not until the phone alarm rang that Yu Lily suddenly woke up. It was already 10:00 in the evening. It was time to sleep. Yu Lily washed off the mask, then turned off the digital screen and lay on the bed. However, she was not sleepy at all. For the whole day, she felt as if something was hanging in her heart. It was like there was a dry fountain in the middle of an empty square. However, all of a sudden, the water at the bottom of the dried-up fountain suddenly gushed out continuously. Late at night, it was as cold as water. The loneliness buried in the deepest part of the human heart was always the easiest to quietly overflow in the middle of the night when one was alone and silently penetrate into every cell of one's body. Meticulous turbulence was pervasive. Sorrow seeped into the heart and grew clusters of flowers, brightly facing all life. But in fact, no one could know that, in fact, watering this brilliance was actually fragile loneliness. One day, this loneliness would no longer be able to support this brilliance, and it would slowly rot from its roots. Then, it would fall inch by inch, and it would no longer be the same as before. If you don't want me, I'll kill you and then kill myself. Tears fell silently from the corner of her eyes. Yu Lily looked at the ceiling with a calm heart. However, there was an inexplicable sourness and pain. It was just a joke. How could she bear to kill him? There was no way she could do it. It was as if there was a blunt awl hammering deep into his heart, causing him a dull pain. Yu Lily turned over and covered her face with the quilt. The hot and humid feeling quickly covered her face. Breathing became more and more difficult, and Yu Lily was unwilling to raise her head. Her throat became more and more stuffy, and the hot and humid feeling stuck to her face and the quilt. In the end, he couldn't help but raise his head abruptly. Fresh air entered his nose, and the cool air made him feel refreshed. Yu Lily was breathing heavily. She didn't know if it was because of suffocation or something else, but her vision was blurred. He couldn't see anything. Chapter 1172. It was quiet all around. Only the sound of the heartbeat machine could be heard. After some time, there was a commotion all around. Oh Ming frowned. The white light from his glasses stung his eyes. If he doesn't get better, it's hard to say when he will get better, but this situation is not uncommon. He may get better in a few days, or he may not get better for the rest of his life. You family members have to do a good job of counseling the patient. Oh Ming couldn't hear what was said after that. He fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up again, it was still dark. Beep. 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 The heartbeat on the electronic electrocardiogram was steady and rhythmic. Oh Ming's heart suddenly jumped. The electrocardiogram fluctuated, but it quickly returned to normal. Yu Lily was awakened by the doorbell. Yu Lily had no idea when she had fallen asleep the night before. Her phone hadn't been charged the night before. When she went to get it, it was turned off. When she opened the door, it was old Mrs. Shen and Shinjilia. Yu Lily had expected it, so she let them in before going to freshen up. The moment she entered, she realized that her eyes were swollen like 2 walnuts. Those eyes. I can't even look at them. She quickly applied them. She didn't know if it was a psychological effect or if she really felt better. She looked left and right and walked out. Shinjilia and old Mrs. Shen acted as if they hadn't seen her. When they saw her, they suggested, "Lily, there are still a few more days before you start work, right? Do you want to go out with Grandma? Go out with old Mrs. Shen?" Yu Lily didn't think it was appropriate, but when she saw the old lady's expectant gaze, she asked, "Where? How about Fujian? I heard that there are a lot of interesting places in Fujian. Moreover, there are many beautiful women there. Let's ask the youngest to drive us there. Anyway, Kingstown is not far from there. We can chat while taking the car there. We can also find a place with beautiful scenery to have a picnic." What do you think? Old Mrs. Shen's eyes were filled with anticipation. I checked. It's only a few hours from Kingstown to Xiamen, and the scenery along the way is great. Yu Lily looked at her expectant eyes and shook her head. Forget it, Grandma. You should go with Shenjilia. I haven't been in a good mood recently. I'm not in the mood to go out. Old Mrs. Shen refused to give up and said, Lily, it's precisely because you're in a bad mood that you want to go out and find a way to relax your soul, isn't that right? Yes. Shenjilia immediately responded with a serious look on his face. Let's go together. It's rare for Grandma to come out. No matter how I asked her to come out in the past, she was always at home and didn't even bother to move. This is also the first time for me to come out with Grandma. Let's go. Shenjilia's gaze was sincere, and his eyes were bright and full of expression. It was as if he could see right into her heart. She shook her head and said, No, Shenjilia, you can go with Grandma. I went to Paris some time ago. I was too busy having fun and didn't have time to finish the draft. Now I have to finish the draft. You can go by yourselves. Shenjilia nodded and said, No, thanks. After that, no matter how much old Mrs. Shen and Shenjilia tried to persuade her, Yu Lily refused to budge. She was indeed in a very bad mood. Yu Lily had never imagined that in the short span of 2 days, her life would change so drastically. Chapter 1173. After treating old Mrs. Shen and Shenjilia to dinner, Yu Lily found an excuse to return home. What she didn't expect was that just as she walked to the entrance of the community, she saw a familiar figure appear at the entrance of the community. Wen Fenglin stepped out of the taxi. In his hand was a simple handbag. In the palm of his hand was a cell phone. It looked like he was calling someone. When Yu Lily saw Wen Fenglin, she was shocked. What is this person doing here? Is he looking for someone? Does he know someone who lives nearby? Or does he live in this neighborhood? Just as Yu Lily was wondering about this, the cell phone in her pocket began to vibrate. She took a look and saw that the name on the screen was Uncle Wen. Yu Lily answered the call and placed it to her ear. Uncle Wen. Lass, where are you? Wen Fenglin asked. Yu Lily took 2 steps forward to the entrance of the neighborhood and replied, I'm here. When Wen Fenglin heard Yu Lily's voice, he turned his head and looked over. When he saw Yu Lily on the phone, he chuckled. 2 dimples appeared on his cheeks, making him look exceptionally good-looking. Yu Lily hung up the phone at the same time. She looked at Wen Fenglin with some doubt and apprehension in her heart. Wen Fenglin and Xiao Ziqing are good friends. Is he helping Xiao Ziqing to cause trouble for me? As if he could sense Yu Lily's uneasiness, the smile on Wen Fenglin's face widened. Beneath his black-rimmed glasses, his small eyes narrowed as he asked, Is there a place nearby for us to sit? He had asked to sit nearby, not at Yu Lily's house. The subtle details made Yu Lily's heart relax a little. She nodded her head and replied, Yes. She brought Wen Fenglin to a nearby cafe. Because of the Spring Festival, it was usually a busy time, but there weren't that many people there. Yu Lily chose a quiet corner. They each ordered a drink and sat facing each other. Yu Lily waited for him to speak first. Wen Fenglin looked at Yu Lily and said, I heard that you beat up O Ming yesterday. You were pretty vicious. He was knocked unconscious. Yu Lily was stunned. She looked at Wen Fenglin and tried to find a hint of a joke on his face. But he didn't. It can't be. O Ming is unconscious? Yu Lily's heart was beating wildly. Wen Fenglin nodded his head and replied, O Ming's mother is very upset. I think it's best that you go visit O Ming. He's not in a good state right now. If you can stay by his side, his condition should improve. After all, to O Ming, Yu Lily's status was very, very special. Just like how he was like Xian in the past. Wen Fenglin believed that their relationship was deeper than his and Xian-er's. Yu Lily's hands were under the table, and her palms were tightly twisted together. At this moment it was as if a raging fire had been set ablaze in her heart, causing all the determination in her heart to vanish in an instant. Shall we go and see him? He didn't seem to be in a good state. Uncle Wen's words could be trusted. Yu Lily almost swayed, but then she remembered what O Ming had said to her yesterday. Chapter 1174. Is his condition that bad? The words from the day before were still ringing in her head. Her mind was a mess. She was caught in a dilemma. O Ming's condition isn't good. Is he still unconscious? Judging from Uncle Wen's expression, he doesn't seem to be anxious or nervous. That can't be true, can it? Wen Fenglin looked at her intently and nodded his head. Not very well. He's been unconscious since yesterday. The doctor said that once he wakes up, the condition of his eyes might worsen. In other words, it was very likely that O Ming would never see again. Yu Lily suddenly felt a warm current rush through her. She couldn't stop the tears from welling up in her eyes. When she felt Wen Fenglin's meaningful gaze, Yu Lily felt like he was a prison warden judging a prisoner. Looking at her with such a gaze made her feel very uncomfortable. Yu Lily thought about it and smiled. In a low voice, she said, Uncle Wen, O Ming is blessed by heaven. He'll definitely recover. I hope so. I also hope that he will recover soon. After all, O Ming calls me uncle. Given his current condition, I'm worried for him. Wen Fenglin looked at Yu Lily and continued, the reason why I came to look for you is that I hope that O Ming will regain consciousness sooner. To be honest, O Ming's mother didn't allow me to look for you. She feels that you're the one who caused her son to become like this. The 2 slaps you gave him yesterday only worsened his injuries. Without a doubt, Xiao Ziqing must hate Yu Lily very much. Yu Lily knew that very well. She smiled and said, Uncle Wen, you weren't around yesterday. You might not have understood what he said to me yesterday. I'll remember what O Ming said yesterday. If anything happens to O Ming in the future, I hope that you won't tell me. It's none of my business. Furthermore, she was afraid that after hearing about O Ming's condition, her heart would soften and she wouldn't be able to control herself. You won't be able to let it go. Wen Fenglin's words hit the nail on the head. He looked at Yu Lily with a smile on his face. This child of yours is very similar to someone I used to know. Is that why he's treating me so well? Yu Lily seemed to understand something, but she didn't say a word. The drink that she had ordered was served. Yu Lily didn't touch it. She looked at Wen Fenglin and stood up. Uncle Wen, thank you for coming to tell me today, but I won't be going. I have something to do. I'll head back first. As he spoke, he was already walking out of his seat. His heart felt like it was being clenched tightly. Wen Fenglin looked at Yu Lily in astonishment. Before coming, Wen Fenglin had thought of countless possibilities, but he hadn't expected Yu Lily to reject him outright. Yu Lily's attitude was beyond Wen Fenglin's expectations. What Wen Fenglin hadn't expected was that Yu Lily's actions would earn him a sense of admiration. When he realized this, Wen Fenglin laughed bitterly to himself. Wen said. Wen. Little boy, it's not that I don't want to help you. It's just that you've crossed the line, Wen Fenglin muttered to himself. One of. You. Chapter 1175. Yu Lily was a little embarrassed. She cleared her throat and said, I haven't finished drawing yet. It's almost time for the update. If I don't rush the draft, I'm afraid the readers will scold me. You draw as well? Wen Fenglin was a little surprised. This was the first time he had heard of Yu Lily's occupation. Yu Lily was even more embarrassed. She cleared her throat and tried to act natural, but she couldn't stop her face from heating up. She nodded her head and said, the nature of my drawing is different from yours. I serialize my comics online, impressive. Wen Fenglin's eyes lit up. Can I take a look at your comics? Yu Lily was even more embarrassed. I draw shoujo comics. I can't show them to you, that's alright. Comics are also a form of art. They have a story and are readable. They're much better than antiques like us, Wen Fenglin said with a smile. He immediately changed the topic. It's fine if you really can't do it. I'm just a little curious. Oops, Yu Lily had a good impression of Wen Fenglin. Since the elders had already spoken so clearly, it wouldn't be right for her to turn them down again. She thought about it and took out her phone. She opened the Eurasian Comics app and found her work. She opened it and said, "This is what I drew," when Fenglin took it from her and flipped through it a few times. Yu Lily couldn't see Wen Fenglin's expression. She stood there awkwardly. This was the first time someone she knew had asked her about her work. It was also the first time someone she knew was looking at her comics. Yu Lily had a strange feeling about it. Yu Lily's hair stood on end. She asked, "Isn't it a little childish?" "No, it's very well drawn." Wen Fenglin looked at the drawing style. "It's different from the comics I've seen in the past. Yours is more realistic. Why does this male lead look so familiar?" The male lead in the drawing was wearing a burgundy suit. His short black hair was the most popular hairstyle of the day. The male lead on the screen was holding a champagne glass. He was squinting his eyes and looking ahead. His features were well defined, and he looked very handsome. However, compared to other comics, Yu Lily's drawing was more realistic. The character in the painting was based on O Ming, so of course he looked familiar. Yu Lily laughed dryly. Just as she was about to say something, she realized that Wen Fenglin had flipped to the page and looked at the title. Love Transaction? The main storyline of the comic was based on Yu Lily's own life. When the title was read, Yu Lily's heart skipped a beat. She quickly snatched her phone back. When she met Wen Fenglin's gaze, she felt a little uneasy. Wen Fenglin merely smiled and replied, "I've seen this comic before. It's ranked at the top of the national comic rankings. It's very popular. Someone introduced this comic to me in the hopes that I would give it a chance to promote it. I haven't had the time to check it out." "I didn't expect the artist to be you." Yu Lily was stunned. She was secretly shocked by Wen Fenglin's words. So, the Eurasian comic had actually gotten Wen Fenglin to recommend it? Wen Fenglin's reputation in the country was not to be underestimated. If Wen Fenglin was the one to promote her, the effect would be. Chapter 1176. Cross-border publicity was bound to have an unimaginable effect on comics. But for the artist himself, there was no benefit. Moreover, such a thing was also a thankless task for the Eurasian comics. The only people who would benefit from it would be the comics and the artist. The more Yu Lily thought about it, the more she realized something. It was O Ming. Eurasian Comics was his company. He must have known about her work and her career. O Ming must have gotten his men to help her with the publicity. That way, once Yu Lily's reputation was established, her future would be smooth sailing. But, something like this had happened to O Ming. Wait a minute. If O Ming was willing to do that for me, then he must be serious about me, right? Yu Lily didn't believe that it was simply because I was his girlfriend or a mistress. If he was sincere, then why did he say those things the day before? It wasn't just the day before. It was the last time, and the time before that. Yu Lily felt that she didn't understand him. In other words, she had never understood this man before. This man's mood swings were unpredictable. All along, he had been overbearing and arrogant. He never explained what he was thinking, and no one could understand him. "Uncle Wen, when did I get you to do the publicity for me?" "Probably last month. I was in Fujian at the time, and the people from Eurasian Comics came to talk to me." Yu Lily nodded her head. The fire that had been burning in her heart slowly died down. Times had changed. The O Ming now was no longer the O Ming of last month. Yu Lily smiled at Wen Fenglin and nodded her head. "I see. Uncle Wen, please sit here for a while. I'll go up to rush the draft." A serialized drawing can't be delayed for too long. Otherwise, it'll lose popularity. All right. Go ahead. When Fenglin nodded his head, Yu Lily turned around and left. When Yu Lily got home, she held the stylus for a long time. Her mind was a mess. Sometimes it was Wen Fenglin's words, and sometimes it was old Mrs. Shen's. Sometimes it was O Ming's and Xiao Ziqing's voices. Frustration. O Ming isn't in a good state. Not in a good state? How bad is that? The people from Eurasian Comics came to me to talk to me. It was hard to estimate the amount of funds and costs required to hire such an artist for publicity. Such a man who treated her like this. Yu Lily's hand holding the pen slightly shrank, and she imagined O Ming's current posture. What did he look like now? Suddenly, his cell phone rang. The sudden tremor made Yu Lily's heart skip a beat. The stylus fell to the ground with a clatter. The caller ID showed old Madame Shen. After Yu Lily calmed down a little, she answered the phone. Old Mrs. Shen was just bored, so she called to nag. Yu Lily chatted with her for a while before hanging up. However, after hanging up the phone, the desire to see O Ming in her heart became even stronger. She wanted to see him, to see him. She wanted to see him. Loving you, leaving you. Chapter 1177. Coincidentally, when Fenglin had a few documents and other matters to attend to, he sat in the shop for a while. When he was done, he stood up to leave. As soon as he stepped out of the shop, he saw Yu Lily standing at the entrance of the estate, waiting for a taxi. A taxi was coming her way. Yu Lily quickly stopped it and got in. When Fenglin looked at her and knew where she was going. Watching the taxi from afar, When Fenglin couldn't help but laugh. What a hypocrite. She was just like her. When Fenglin's eyes darkened as he thought of the woman in his memories. By the time Yu Lily reached the hospital in a taxi, it was already half an hour later. On the 5th day of the Lunar New Year, there were fewer people at the hospital than usual. O Ming was considered half a public figure. If she asked directly, the receptionist wouldn't tell her where O Ming was. Yu Lily went in and walked to the VIP ward area with ease. The O family had a habit, nostalgia. They would probably still be staying in room V8. As Yu Lily walked in that direction, she decided to take a gamble. She didn't expect to see O Ming's ward when she got closer. However, as soon as he got closer, he heard voices coming from inside. That woman is so evil. Not only did she hurt you like this, she even hit you yesterday. Xiao Ziqing's voice was sobbing. She sounded sad and full of hatred. Xiao Ziqing had never had a good impression of Yu Lily. Especially after Yu Lily had hit her son the day before, Xiao Ziqing felt that the woman was despicable. She has ulterior motives and deserves to be punished. When Yu Lily heard Xiao Ziqing's voice from outside, she stopped in her tracks and stood at the door. O Ming didn't say a word. Xiao Ziqing continued, I don't care if what you said yesterday was true or false. Since you broke up with her, it's best if you don't contact her again. I've already listened to you and blacklisted her number on your phone. I've also deleted the speed dial. From now on, just pretend that this woman never appeared. I've already listened to you. Did O Ming ask Xiao Ziqing to do that? It turned out that O Ming was not only like this in front of her, but also in front of his mother. A blind person who couldn't see anything let others put her number into the blacklist. In that case, she would never be able to contact him again. It was impossible for a blind person to pull her number out of the blacklist. As for the others, it was even more impossible for them to help him pull it out. Yu Lily stood at the door and felt like a fool. Yu Lily's heart ached, and her original idea of going in disappeared. She didn't want to go in anymore. However, at the same time as she turned around, a low voice came from inside. It was muffled, but it seemed to reach into her heart. Yes. It was O Ming. Yu Lily's heart was like a wisp of dry straw floating on a charcoal fire. When it came into contact with the fire, it instantly burned into ashes and scattered. It seemed that Xiao Ziqing really hated him. Since ancient times, it was impossible to be loyal and filial at the same time. Chapter 1178. At that moment, she felt like a drowning dog. She couldn't describe how miserable she was. She wasn't in front of them, but the feeling was as strong as ever. She walked away faster and faster. She lowered her head and didn't even dare to look back. She walked away quickly. In the ward, Xiao Ziqing was surprised by Ming's answer. She asked, "Really? You promised me?" Ming's eyes were empty, and he looked ahead without any focus. At first glance, they looked like the eyes of those imitation dolls. "You're my mother. I'll do whatever you say. Anyway, I don't have the slightest choice in front of you, do I?" Ming stared blankly ahead, and a bitter smile hung on his lips. He looked a little helpless, but at the same time, everyone could clearly feel that he was sad. Xiao Ziqing was taken aback when she heard this. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. After a moment of silence, Xiao Ziqing asked, "Are you still blaming me?" "You are my mother." "I dare not blame you," Ming said. However, when these words were heard by others, it was even more chilling. Xiao Ziqing's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Ming and said earnestly, "Mom is doing this for your own good. What's so good about that woman? Why do you insist on having her? Do you want her to kill you before you can give up? You are my son. I will never harm you." Yes, it was all for his own good. She was his mother. How could she deliberately harm him? But it was this kind of love and kindness that made his head hurt. They were all doing this for his own good. Why should he not listen? They were all doing this for his own good, so his own choice would also be completely taken away, not even leaving a single shred of it. Everything was for the sake of that honorable banner, it was for his own good. The bitter smile on Ming's face widened, and he said, "I know. Anyway, I'm blind now, and I don't want to hold her back. It's good to let her go. If we break up, she can find someone better. There is more than one man in the world. But in this world, there was only one you, Lily." Ming lay down, pulled up the quilt, and lay on his side. When Xiao Ziqing heard this, she felt that Ming was even more stubborn. Looking at Ming lying on the bed, she was so angry that she stomped her feet. At the same time, she was so distressed that she didn't know what to say. Looking at her son for a long time, Xiao Ziqing actually didn't know whether what she was doing was right or wrong. Xiao Ziqing stood in place for a long time before she finally gritted her teeth and said, "One day, you'll understand my good intentions. You're not the only man in this world, but you're my only son. I can't let her kill you." This woman was not a kind person. She had evil intentions. After Xiao Ziqing finished speaking, she was even more certain of her thoughts. She stomped her feet, turned around, and left. Ming listened as the footsteps faded away and opened his eyes. In front of him, it was as if Lily, dressed in red and smiling like a flower, appeared. Today was the 5th day of the Lunar New Year. 25 years ago today, Kingstown welcomed its rare winter. 25 years ago, it was snowing in Kingstown, a rare occurrence in 100 years. The kind director of the orphanage saved a newborn baby girl and named her Lily. Chapter 1179. Lily walked like a zombie. When she took a taxi home, she was called out by the taxi driver. She paid the fare and went upstairs. When she got out of the elevator, she started to look for the key. She had only been away for a day, but she was very attached to this place. It was just a shared house, but it was the only place in the world that she could call home. She entered the password and took out the key to open the door. It was dark inside. Lily followed her memory and touched the switch. When she was about to open it, there was a sudden movement inside. The sound of high heels came from inside, and Lily's heart was alarmed, but at the same time, full of surprise, and a familiar voice suddenly shouted, "Surprise! A few familiar voices mixed together, sounding very excited. Among them, the most excited voice was undoubtedly old Mrs. Shen. The chandelier in the living room was turned on, and there were many balloons in the living room. Everyone was wearing a hat on their head. It looked very lovely and festive. Old Mrs. Shen walked toward you Lily with a heart-shaped balloon in her hands and shouted, "Lily, why are you back so soon? We are not fully prepared." You Lily was stunned when she saw the scene. In front of her, not only was old Mrs. Shen, but also Shenjilia, Yi Qianqian, Yi Yuyu, and a few colleagues who were good friends with her in the company. They were all here? Don't you go to work on the 8th day of the new year? Today is only the 5th. Yu Lily's first reaction was to blurt out. Yi Qianqian and a few colleagues came forward and helped her to sit on the sofa. Yi Qianqian said, "Yes, but I came back early. Today is your birthday. We discussed it a long time ago to give you a surprise. How is it? Are you surprised by your sister's surprise?" Yu Lily looked at them in a daze. Everything around her, including the big cake box on the coffee table, and the colleagues and friends around her, all looked very happy. His originally ice-cold heart felt as if it had been injected with a warm current in an instant. Yu Lily looked at Yi Qianqian's big smile in front of her, and tears welled up in her eyes. Very quickly, she held back the tears and smiled at them with a big smile. "Didn't I waste your vacation? I won't compensate you for your losses." Yi Qianqian took out a hat and put it on her head. She glared at her and said, "If you don't compensate me, I'm still hoping that you'll take us on a vacation." "You want to travel?" "Yeah, I heard all about it." "Did you really break up with Ming?" Yi Qianqian leaned over and whispered. Yu Lily was stunned when she heard that. When Yi Qianqian saw the expression on Yu Lily's face, she knew she was right. Before Yu Lily could react, she immediately said, "Well done. You shouldn't miss something like that. Look at Shenjilia. He's handsome, rich, and a psychiatrist. His mental fortitude is impeccable. Why would he give up a field of flowers for a pile of cow dung?" Yu Lily's eyes widened. Yi Qianqian's metaphor was not polite at all. Yu Lily's lips twitched. This was the first time she had heard someone compare Ming to cow dung. Chapter 1180. In front of her, Shenjilia's bright smile appeared and waved at Yu Lily. Yu Lily glanced at him and was speechless. She turned back and said, "Don't pick the wildflowers on the side of the road." Yi Qianqian burst out laughing, and Shenjilia's face fell. He said with some resentment, "How did I become a wildflower? I'm better than many people." "That's right. You're much better than your previous ex-boyfriend." Yi Qianqian snorted. Thinking of the last time she was drunk and lying in the living room all night, she wanted to slap that man. What kind of man is he? He doesn't care about women at all. Doesn't he know how to cherish women? Doesn't he know how to help women back to their rooms? It wasn't easy for her to lie on the cold floor all night. Although the other two colleagues didn't know what kind of person Ming was, Shenjilia was indeed very good. Hearing Yi Qianqian's words, they immediately seconded, "That's right, Lily. Shen is a good person. He is handsome and has good qualifications. What do you want? What does your ex-boyfriend look like? Do you have a picture? His qualifications are definitely not as good as Shen's, right?" Shenjilia was from the capital. If Yu Lily married Shenjilia, she would definitely become a resident of the capital. Such a thing would start to change fundamentally. If such a good thing happened to them, they would definitely agree without hesitation. Maybe they would force themselves on her, and then the rice would be cooked. Then, wouldn't it be natural for them to marry him and become a resident of the capital? Although the local residents of Kingstown were also very good, they were still inferior to those in the capital. Yu Lily knew what they were thinking, so she decided to ignore them. Shenjilia quickly said, "Since Lily is back, let's do it this way. There's no need to prepare anything else. Just sit down." That manner, that posture, impressively, was like that of a male master. Yi Qianqian couldn't help but look at Shenjilia and secretly gave him a thumbs up. Good guy, he's so thick-skinned. I like it. Shenjilia pretended not to see Yi Qianqian's eyes and asked the other two colleagues to sit down. Then, he opened the cake box. The cake was huge, huge, huge. Old Mrs. Shen's eyes lit up as she looked at the huge cake. When Yu Lily saw the cake, she was even more stunned. It was a strawberry cake. The whole cake was densely covered with strawberries. Apart from the strawberries, there were also chocolate decorations. It looked very fragrant, very delicious. Shenjilia began to insert and light the candles. There were exactly 25 of them. It seemed that, every year on her birthday, the people around her would change. But none of those years had given her such a warm and pleasant surprise. Even O Ming hadn't given her such a feeling. After Shenjilia lit the candles, everyone urged Yu Lily to make a wish. Yu Lily chuckled, closed her eyes, put her palms together, and said, I hope so many people will celebrate my birthday with me every year. Old Mrs. Shen's heart ached when she heard that, and so did Yi Qianqian. However, she immediately put on a straight face and said, it won't come true if you say it out loud. Say it again in your heart. Say it differently. Hearing that, Yu Lily's eyes curved. Chapter 1181. After blowing out the candles, Yu Lily picked up a plastic knife and started cutting the cake. The cake was too big and thick, and Yu Lily's hands weren't strong enough. She only messed up the cake after a long time. Shenjilia couldn't stand it anymore. He went behind Yu Lily and reached out to hold her hand. Yu Lily was so focused on the cake in front of her that she didn't expect Shenjilia to suddenly make such a move. She could clearly feel the warmth of the man behind her. Shenjilia's warm breath was beside her ear. His actions were ambiguous. Everyone stared at him. The other two female colleagues wanted to make a fuss, but when they saw Shenjilia's calm expression, they thought they were overthinking it. However, Yu Lily, who was the person in question, was obviously shocked and stunned. Before she could turn her head, she felt Shenjilia's hand tighten slightly. He held her hand and cut it off. After cutting the cake, Shenjilia immediately let go of her hand. Happy birthday! Yi Qianqian took the lead and shouted. Seeing Yu Lily's slightly shocked expression, everyone tacitly didn't mention it. Yu Lily looked back at Shenjilia and found that he wasn't looking at her. Instead, he took out the disposable plate of the cake and divided it up. Seeing that, Yu Lily lowered her head to cut the cake. When she was halfway through, Shenjilia came forward and snatched the knife away. He said, You're so slow. Let me do it. This scene was witnessed by all the women. When old Mrs. Shen saw it, she had a new understanding of her grandson's tricks. She secretly gave Shenjilia a look of approval. Then, she turned her head and continued to play dumb. After everyone finished eating the cake, their stomachs were almost full. Their original plan to go out for supper had to be cancelled. Yi Qianqian took out a deck of cards from somewhere, and the four of them played together. Old Mrs. Shen was getting on in years, and she woke up early in the morning. After eating the cake, she felt a little tired. She watched a group of young people play on the sofa and fell asleep before she knew it. Old Mrs. Shen sat behind Shenjilia, and Yu Lily sat across from them. Seeing the old lady like that, Yu Lily asked Shenjilia to take the old lady back first. However, the old lady wouldn't wake up no matter how hard she tried. Yu Lily had no choice but to let Shenjilia carry the old lady to sleep in her room. After the few of them finished playing cards, they went their separate ways to chat. At the end of the conversation, everyone was thinking about how they should spend the next 2 days of vacation. There was no conclusion to the discussion. The two colleagues felt bored, so they left first. Not long after the two colleagues left, Shenjilia suddenly looked up and said, Why don't we go on a trip? Hearing this, Yi Qianqian suddenly became excited. She looked at Shenjilia in front of her, and her eyes lit up. She asked, Where are we going for a vacation? Let's go to Fujian. I heard it's very beautiful there. Shenjilia's words were directed at Yi Qianqian, but his eyes were looking at Yu Lily. My grandmother also wants to go, but because you're not going, she doesn't want to go either. It's rare that grandmother is in the mood to travel. Why don't you come along? Although old Mrs. Shen was old, she was playful and even a little childish. Chapter 1182. Yu Lily had clearly rejected the idea that day, but Shenjilia had brought it up again. Yu Lily could tell that old Mrs. Shen really wanted to go. Most importantly, Yi Qianqian looked like she really wanted to go too. A vacation, it was good to relax. Yu Lily thought about it and quickly nodded her head. Shenjilia smiled and looked at Yu Lily with a burning gaze. He nodded his head and said, "All right, let's go." That night, old Mrs. Shen and Yu Lily slept together, and Shenjilia returned to the hotel. The next morning, at 7 or 8 o'clock, Shenjilia rang the doorbell. What surprised Yi Qianqian and Yu Lily the most was that he had everything prepared. A car for the trip, snacks to eat, and a hotel reservation had been made. Yu Lily, Yi Qianqian, and old Mrs. Shen only had to pack a change of clothes before they set off. Kingstown wasn't far from Fujian, but it was a 3 to 4 hour drive. Along the way, they chatted and laughed, and time passed quickly. Very soon, the local scenery was revealed. The spring-like scenery was breathtakingly beautiful. When they reached the hotel, it was past 1 in the afternoon. After dinner, they went to the nearby scenic spots. What a great place! Yu Lily couldn't help but exclaim as she stood by the clear lake. At a glance, the mountains were foggy, and the sounds of birds chirping and wings flapping could be heard. The surface of the water was sparkling, and the sound of gurgling was endless. The air was fresh, and the sun shone down, making the place look like a fairyland. Beautiful. It's even more beautiful when the sun rises, old Mrs. Shen said with a smile as she stood behind Yu Lily. Yu Lily looked at the old lady, and the old lady looked back at her. That pair of slightly turbid old eyes looked very bright at this moment. Yu Lily saw her own reflection in the old lady's eyes. Old Mrs. Shen's eyes reddened, and she lamented, "It's not easy to be able to stand here with you. Did you know, Lily? You actually look like the daughter of a friend of mine." Yu Lily looked at old Mrs. Shen and waited for her to continue. Old Mrs. Shen changed the topic and didn't continue. Instead, she asked, "How did you meet Wen Fenglin?" Yu Lily thought for a moment and carefully chose her words. Then, she told him everything in detail. In the end, she added, "Uncle Wen is a very good person. He treats me very well." Old Mrs. Shen had a look of understanding on her face as she said, "Wen Fenglin is a good man, but I'm guessing that the reason he treats you so well is because he can tell that you resemble that old friend of his." "Xian Yu Lily asked tentatively. "How did you know?" "I heard Uncle Wen and O Ming's mother mention it." Chapter 1183. Old Mrs. Shen wanted to say something, but stopped herself. She shook her head and said, "It's such a pity for such a good girl. Her health has been poor since she was young. She has kidney problems and heart problems. It's impossible for her to marry, let alone be with a man." Yu Lily was an adult. She knew what old Mrs. Shen meant. She couldn't be with a man. If what old Mrs. Shen said was true, then given Wen Fenglin's personality, he would never do anything with Xian If it weren't for that, I would have suspected that you were Xian daughter. Old Mrs. Shen smiled. Her eyes were filled with kindness. "Do I look like her?" Old Mrs. Shen shook her head and said, "You don't look alike, but your charm is similar." As she spoke, she walked to Yu Lily's side and said, "Especially this side of your face. You look very much like Xian except that Xian is fairer than you. It's not your healthy skin tone, but the pale kind of white." Yu Lily could imagine what that must have been like. Old Mrs. Shen frowned as she looked Yu Lily up and down. She rubbed her chin and muttered, "From the side, you look a little alike. But, upon closer inspection, you look healthier and more delicate than Xian You're more exquisite, and your features aren't alike either, there was an indescribable feeling that people couldn't help but pull her towards Xian. It was a familiar feeling. They didn't look alike in any way, but the more they spent time together, the stronger the feeling became. Old Mrs. Shen gestured and shook her head. Nope. Yu Lily was amused by the old lady's expression. Looking at old Mrs. Shen, the feeling of familiarity in her heart grew stronger. How nice it would be if she was really my grandmother. With that thought in mind, Yu Lily's expression softened a little. The afterglow of the setting sun shone from afar. The orange-red sunset reflected off the surface of the lake. The sunlight pierced through the clouds and bathed everyone's hair and body in an orange-red hue. It was beautiful and dazzling. Shenjilie stood not far behind and watched Yu Lily in the distance. His lips curled into a smile, and his gaze softened. Yi Qianqian squatted by the bridge and looked at Shenjilie's unwavering gaze. She pouted her lips, picked up a stone, and threw it into the lake. Let's go somewhere else to play, Grandma. Yu Lily took old Mrs. Shen's hand. When she turned around, she met Shenjilie's gaze. But very quickly, Shenjilie's gaze shifted away. It was as if he had inadvertently turned his head to look at her without leaving a trace. Yu Lily didn't care. She took the old lady's hand and walked toward the exit. He didn't notice the strange look in Yi Qianqian's eyes behind him. After playing for a while, they ate something together and then returned to the hotel together. Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian were both girls, so they booked a room for themselves. Old Mrs. Han and Shenjilie each had a room. Yu Lily asked Yi Qianqian to take a shower first. She sat on the bed with her phone in her hand and scrolled through Weibo. Just as he was laughing so hard while watching a short video, a phone call interrupted the video. An unknown number called, and the caller ID was the city she was currently in. Who could it be? Yu Lily's first thought was that it was a prank call. The phone rang a few times, but the caller didn't hang up. She picked it up. Hello? Chapter 1184. Police station. Boyfriend? My boyfriend is at the police station? What the hell? Where did my boyfriend come from? Why is he at the police station? Yu Lily was confused and asked, Mr. Policeman, are you mistaken? I don't have a boyfriend. You don't have a boyfriend, but this gentleman said he was your boyfriend and gave us your phone number for us to call. The policeman's voice was a little loud and not very friendly. Miss, no matter what you quarreled with, you shouldn't have left a blind man on the road. It's so dangerous. Fortunately, he knew to come to the police station for help. He doesn't have a guide cane or a guide dog. If he was hit by a car on the road, you'd be in deep trouble. A blind man? Oh Ming? Yu Lily couldn't believe it and asked, Mr. Policeman, what's the name of the man who claimed to be my boyfriend? I think his surname is O. The policeman's voice was obviously a little farther away. I'm talking to your girlfriend on the phone. What's your name? After a while, the man on the other side of the phone said, he said his name is O Ming. Yu Lily had guessed many times, and every guess was O Ming. But when she heard O Ming's name, Yu Lily was still shocked. O Ming? Is it really O Ming? Is it really O Ming? Yu Lily couldn't believe it and said, can you ask him to answer the phone? Just a moment. The man on the other side of the phone seemed to be communicating, but Yu Lily had already sat up. At that moment, her heart was still full of disbelief. Taking advantage of this gap, Yu Lily put the phone on speaker and then went to Baidu to check the number. As soon as the number was dialed, it immediately showed the address of the local police station, as well as the phone number, the director, and the person in charge. Oh my God, it really is the police station. There was a rustling sound on the other side of the phone, and the policeman quickly came over and said, the gentleman refused to answer the phone. Miss Yu, please come over. It's so late. Do you have to make a quarrel between lovers so big? Yu Lily was speechless. A quarrel between lovers really didn't have to be so big. But now the point was that she and O Ming were no longer lovers. Not to mention that they weren't lovers, they weren't even friends. What right did she have to pick her up? Girlfriend? I'm sorry, I do know him, but I'm not his girlfriend. You should ask someone else to pick him up. Aya, it's already past 10:00 in the evening. The person in charge here is ready to get off work because he has worked overtime for almost half an hour. He doesn't have any money with him now. I heard that in order to find you, he hasn't eaten for a whole day. He can't see and his hand is injured. He looks so pitiful. Lily was silent for a moment, then said, Mr. Policeman, can you do me a favor and take him to a hotel to stay? I'll transfer the money to your account and let him eat and stay. This is a police station, not a shelter, nor an errand station. I'll send the address to your phone. You can come over now. As he spoke, he actually hung up the phone. Lily felt a headache and sighed with her hand on her forehead. He had no choice but to put on his shoes and coat, then took a taxi to the police station. When she got out of the car, Lily shivered in the cold wind. It was unexpectedly cold today. Chapter 1185. At that moment, Ming was sitting in front of a table. He was wearing a thin jacket with silk pajamas underneath. His hand was in a cast and hung around his neck. He was also wearing thin silk pajama pants. The dark purple satin glowed faintly under the fluorescent light. He looked very noble, and one could tell at a glance that he was very expensive. However, he was only wearing a pair of ordinary cotton shoes. He looked, a little down and out, a little ragged. What made her heart ache was Ming's eyes. They were supposed to be bright and bright, but at that moment, they were empty and unfocused. They were like the eyes of a rag doll. Without a soul, they were gray and dark. Lily's footsteps slowed down as she walked inside. Seeing Ming like that made her heart ache. She was clearly in front of him, but he couldn't see her. But, why is he here? Shouldn't he be in Kingstown at this time? And, shouldn't he be in the hospital at this time? What is going on? There were policemen chatting inside. When they saw Lily come in, one of them immediately lit up and shouted, Miss Yu, are you here to pick up Mr. O? When he heard the policeman's words, Ming was obviously stunned. He turned his head in Lily's direction and faced her. When Lily heard the policeman's words, she smiled and said, I am Lily. Please wait a moment. Ming faced the front of Lily and reached his hand out toward her. When Lily saw his hand, she stopped in her tracks. Lily felt a sudden pain in her heart when she saw him reaching out to her so naturally. Ming was expressionless. He didn't say a word, but he easily affected her emotions. This guy is so disgusting. Soon, Lily looked up and automatically ignored his hand. She pretended not to see it and looked at the policeman. When did he come? At 10:00, I think. We saw him wandering on the road, so we brought him back, a policeman said. It's not that I want to criticize you young people, but how can you let a blind man wander around? Fortunately, nothing happened. If something happened, who could bear the responsibility? Yes, no one could bear the responsibility. However, such a responsibility should not be borne by her. Lily's gaze finally returned to Ming. She looked at his hand that was still extended toward her and asked, How did you get here? Ming didn't say anything. He reached out and grabbed Lily. Lily looked at him and took a step back easily. Then, Ming jumped into the air. Shouldn't you be hospitalized at this time? Did the doctor agree to discharge you? Lily's tone was not very pleasant. She sounded very disgusted. Hearing Lily's tone, the surrounding police officers, who had thought that she would quickly take the man away, looked at each other. However, Ming still did not speak. His rosy lips were pursed into a thin line, and his eyes were empty as he looked ahead. Lily's tone became even worse. As if she had lost her temper, she roared, Do your parents know that you came from Kingstown? Still, there was no answer. Ming was like a mute, refusing to say a word. Chapter 1186. He knew that she couldn't just sit back and do nothing. He knew that she couldn't just leave him be. He was the one who broke up with her first. He was the one who chased her away. He was also the one who was afraid that she would covet his family's money. How could he still come to her so naturally? He didn't even change his clothes. He didn't even bring anyone with him. Yu Lily could even tell at a glance that the jacket he was wearing wasn't Oh Ming's at all. He was wearing such a thin set of pajamas, and he was looking for someone. Didn't he feel embarrassed? Didn't he feel embarrassed by his behavior? Yu Lily looked at him with hatred and gritted her teeth. I'll call your mother and ask her to come pick you up. As she spoke, she picked up her phone and scrolled through her contact list. Who would have thought that Oh Ming would suddenly stand up and accurately slap her cell phone away? The phone fell to the ground. Yu Lily widened her eyes at the man in front of her. She was a little angry. This is the police station. You're damaging my personal property. As she spoke, she picked up her phone and turned to look at the policeman. Mr. Policeman, you've seen it for yourself. Please leave him here. I'll call his mother. I'll leave first. But Oh Ming still didn't say a word. He walked forward and reached out with his uninjured hand to grab Yu Lily's hand. Yu Lily was quick to react and quickly dodged. Oh Ming's hand missed and grabbed her down jacket. Just like that, he tugged hard and refused to let go. Hey, are you crazy? Let go. Yu Lily held the phone in one hand and tried to pull him away with the other, but Oh Ming's strength was surprisingly strong. Yu Lily couldn't move him at all. Yu Lily's anger rose. At that moment, she felt that this man was shameless and unreasonable. She raised her phone and smashed it into his palm. Let go. Let go. Let go. Oh Ming's hands, which were already stiff from the cold, immediately turned red after being beaten so many times. No matter how Yu Lily hit him, Oh Ming didn't make a sound. Do you have any shame? How can a man entangle a woman like me? Let go. Yu Lily couldn't bear it anymore. She roared and hit him harder. Oh Ming. Seeing this, the policeman, who thought it was just a couple quarreling, also felt that something was wrong. They couldn't care less about watching the fun and hurried forward to pull them apart. They warned, Miss, this is the police station. You can't beat disabled people. Disabled people, these 4 words were even more hurtful. As expected, Yu Lily clearly saw Oh Ming's movements pause. It was obvious that his expression changed slightly. Yu Lily didn't feel happy at all. Instead, she was a little annoyed. She turned her head and glared at the policeman, shouting, What disabled person? How does such a big man look like a disabled person? He just can't see it for the time being. The policeman was stunned and looked at Yu Lily inexplicably. What was going on? Wasn't he a disabled person? Blind and fractured. However, the policeman immediately caught onto Yu Lily's words and questioned her. Didn't you say that he wasn't your boyfriend? It seems like your relationship isn't ordinary. When Yu Lily heard that, she was speechless. Chapter 1187. Hearing that, Yu Lily subconsciously looked at Oh Ming's hand that had been beaten by her. Sure enough, the back of Oh Ming's hand was green and red. It was hanging by his side, and his eyes were empty as he stood silently. Yu Lily's heart ached when she saw that. Did I hit him? What a sin. But she immediately realized her subconscious reaction, and her heart immediately suppressed that feeling. Damn it. He was asking for it. Why should I feel sorry for him? Why doesn't anyone feel sorry for me? Hey, it's so late, and the weather is so cold. Don't be awkward. It's not easy for everyone. You quickly take her back and make it convenient for us, the police, okay? One of them said to Yu Lily with a cold breath. Yu Lily nodded. This coat is mine. One of the police officers pointed to Oh Ming's cotton coat. It was very thin. Yu Lily felt even more speechless. He simply signed the papers and reluctantly took the man away. Returning the jacket to the comrade, Yu Lily looked at the dark purple satin pajamas that Oh Ming was wearing. Her brows furrowed. Yu Lily took off her long down jacket and draped it over him without another word. Unexpectedly, Oh Ming reached out and finally said, "I'm not cold. You can wear it yourself." Bullsh *T. Yu Lily rolled her eyes at him and slapped his hand away. "What nonsense are you talking to me for? F***ck, I'm so unlucky to have met you." What he said, the lips of the police officers behind her twitched, and they were speechless. Yu Lily helped Oh Ming put his shirt on. She let one of his hands go through the sleeves and covered him with the other. Then, she carefully zipped up his shirt and put his hat on. Oh Ming was much taller than Yu Lily. Originally, Yu Lily was wearing a long down jacket that almost reached her ankles, but Oh Ming only wore it to his knees. But this kind of equipment was enough to keep him warm. After checking to make sure it was airtight and warm, Yu Lily took his hand and walked out. The police officers behind her watched and shook their heads. They sighed and said, "Women are not to be trifled with. My girlfriend is even more difficult to deal with. This brat is really something. If my girlfriend treated me like this, I would have quit long ago. I can't see, can I? How can I not lower my head when I'm under the eaves?" That's true. It's not easy for a blind man to find a girlfriend. How could he not think about her? All right, it's time to get off work. We can finally leave. As soon as she stepped out of the police station, Yu Lily felt the cold wind blowing and shivered. Yu Lily was only wearing a long sweater and a thin pair of leggings. In such a cold and windy night, this kind of equipment looked particularly thin. Shivering from the cold, Yu Lily felt that this man was extremely hateful. He had nothing to do. Why did you have to find trouble for me? Yu Lily held on to his hand. Her movements were not very gentle as she shouted, "Go down the stairs. Don't roll down." Unexpectedly, Oh Ming pulled her over and said, "It's so cold. You're still cold dressed like this. Do you know what I'm dressed like?" Yu Lily roared. Oh Ming pulled her over and held her tightly in his arms. He said, "Then let's get warm together." Chapter 1188. At that moment, Yu Lily was touched by his warm embrace. Her heart fluttered slightly. The familiar embrace, the familiar smell, and the familiar person, but it can't be like this. Yu Lily was annoyed, pushed his hand away, and shouted, "Are you F***king sick? Who do you think you are? Why are you hugging me? Disgusting." With that, she pushed Oh Ming away. Oh Ming's eyes were darker, and the street lights were reflected in his eyes. They were still empty and unfocused. Yu Lily inadvertently turned her head and saw the man's loneliness at a glance. Pursing her lips, Yu Lily stuffed his clothes back, pulled his sleeve, and shouted, "Follow me down the stairs." Her tone was very bad, very bad. Even Yu Lily herself felt that she was a little too fierce. However, a pair of eyes were staring at his feet, pulling him down step by step. Oh Ming slowly followed her down the stairs. Just after he went down the stairs, he opened his clothes again and pulled her over. "It's so cold." Yu Lily had long been shivering from the cold. Suddenly falling into a warm place, she felt comfortable. But clearly feeling the temperature of the man behind her, Yu Lily felt a little uncomfortable. What does this mean? Didn't we break up? What does he mean by hugging me like this? But the weather is too cold, so it will be much more comfortable. Forget it, I can't freeze myself, otherwise the loss will outweigh the gain. Yu Lily muttered in her heart, took the blind man to the side of the road, and stopped a taxi. Now that Oh Ming and Yu Lily were in such an awkward relationship, it was certainly impossible to take this guy back to the hotel where she was staying. When she got in the car, she asked, "Did you bring your ID card?" Yu Lily originally did not have any hope. After all, this guy not only had no money, but also no mobile phone or wallet. How could he bring his ID card? Unexpectedly, Oh Ming really took out a white card. Resident ID card. Yu Lily took the ID card closer to look, and it turned out to be Oh Ming's ID card. Seeing this ID card, Yu Lily was even more suspicious and asked, "What are you doing here?" Oh Ming did not speak, but slowly unbuttoned his clothes, trying to take them off. Yu Lily saw this, pressed his hand, and asked fiercely, "What do you want to do?" "Take them off." One word, concise and comprehensive. However, the driver who was driving turned around and looked at them with a strange look. "Wear it. You idiot." Yu Lily roughly helped him straighten his clothes and turned to the driver. "Let's go to a nearby hotel." The driver took a look and asked, "What kind of place are we going to?" "There are many hotels nearby. Go to a better one, 4, 5 stars. Yu Lily's heart was bleeding. This type of hotel was extremely expensive. But Oh Ming, this bastard, could he get used to staying in ordinary hotels? But after saying that, Yu Lily suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why did she have to think for him? She must be crazy. She then said, "Let's go to a normal hotel." The driver nodded and stopped at a traffic light. It looked very magnificent. Sure enough, Yu Lily saw the big signboard at a glance. Sheraton Resort Hotel, F*CK, a 5-star hotel. Chapter 1189. But the arrow was already on the string, and Yu Lily was too cold to speak. She grabbed Oh Ming's clothes and walked inside. She went to the front desk and checked into a room. Yu Lily took out Oh Ming's ID card and slapped it on the counter. "One room." "Okay, please show me your ID card." The receptionist smiled politely. "I'm not staying here. He's staying alone. I'll send him up later." "Okay." The receptionist took Oh Ming's ID card and was about to complete the formalities when she heard Oh Ming say, "I'm not staying." Yu Lily said, "Ignore him. I'll pay." Oh Ming pulled her. His eyes were empty and unfocused. He said coldly, "I'm hungry." "None of my business." Yu Lily took his hand away. After Oh Ming let go, he grabbed her again and said, "My last meal was yesterday at noon." In other words, he hadn't eaten anything since yesterday's dinner and the whole day. Even a man of iron wouldn't be able to bear such hunger. Moreover, Oh Ming's stomach wasn't good. No wonder he had lost so much weight. His mental state didn't seem very good. Yu Lily felt sorry for him, but she scolded him fiercely, "Can't you F*King behave when you're blind? Can't you just be a quiet blind man and be obedient? You're crazy." Oh Ming didn't say anything. He tightened his grip on Yu Lily's hand. The heat from his palm seemed to penetrate deep into her soul. Yu Lily pushed his hand away and asked the receptionist, "Do you have food and beverages in your hotel?" "Yes, our kitchen provides 24-hour food and beverage service." "That's good. Ask him what he wants to eat later. Give him a single room. He's staying alone." "Okay. Wait a moment. I can't stay." Oh Ming pulled her hard and shouted at the receptionist, "Give me back my ID card." "Is it your turn to speak?" Yu Lily gave him a shove. "I'll call your mother to pick you up later. You better behave yourself." Oh Ming seemed to be throwing a tantrum. He pulled her hard and said, "I can't stay. Don't call me that. I don't want my ID card anymore. Let's go." "You're crazy." Yu Lily was furious. She pushed his hand away and shouted, "I think you are not only blind, but also have a problem with your brain. I'm paying for you to stay in a 5-star hotel, and you're still acting like this? You should just stay here and calm down. I won't accompany you anymore." With that, she flung Oh Ming's hand away. However, although it was only a single hand, its strength was shockingly great. Yu Lily tried several times, but she couldn't let go of his hand. She shouted helplessly, "Let go." Oh Ming pursed his lips and didn't say anything. As if sensing that Yu Lily was really angry, he cautiously said, shall we eat first? Yu Lily closed her eyes and gritted her teeth in anger. Oh Ming didn't seem to notice her anger and added, I want to eat hot pot. Hot pot? In this kind of cold weather, eating hot pot was the best. Yu Lily was tempted by his words, but then she became suspicious. I thought you didn't like hot pot? Now I do, Oh Ming said calmly. Yu Lily glared at him and said, then let's get a room first. After eating, we can come and stay. Chapter 1190. Damn you. Yu Lily slapped the back of his hand. Do you have any shame? Do you know who I am? Let me ask you, does your face hurt? How could he not know? But, he just wanted to be with her. He really, really wanted to be with her. He thought of sneaking out and didn't even have time to change his clothes. When he heard that she was here, he used all the money in his wallet to get someone to bring her here. Who knew, after coming here, he had no idea where she was, and he couldn't find her. He could only stay at the police station and let the police help him. Hearing what she said, Oh Ming shut his mouth. He grabbed her hand and said, let's eat first. I'm starving. Miss, do you want to stay here? The receptionist asked. No. Stop. The two of them said in unison. Yu Lily turned her head and glared at him, but he just stared blankly ahead without much expression on his face. Are you staying or not? The receptionist was also driven crazy by the two of them and asked helplessly. Yu Lily face-bombed. Let's open it first. If you don't live with me, I won't live with you. Oh Ming's voice was indifferent, but the words he said made it sound like he was angry with Yu Lily. When Yu Lily heard that, she was both angry and amused. She glared at him and asked, if you don't want to stay, you'll sleep on the bridge? Oh Ming answered without hesitation, that's fine too. You're crazy. Yu Lily waved her hand. Then go sleep on the bridge. Just think of it as me being bitten by a dog out of kindness. Most importantly, this dog was insatiable. You're scolding me. Oh Ming sounded a little aggrieved. I'm so hungry that I don't have any energy. Yu Lily really felt that her temper was off the charts. She looked down at her arm that was held tightly. No matter how she looked at it, this guy didn't look like he was hungry and had no strength. But in the end, he couldn't let it go. After giving the receptionist an apologetic smile, he took Oh Ming's ID card back. Cold. Outside, Yu Lily was so cold that she doubted her life. She brought Oh Ming to a restaurant that was still open, but they didn't eat hot pot. Yu Lily ordered hot soup and desserts. She also ordered some light dishes and let him eat by himself. Oh Ming couldn't see, and he could only move one hand. At this moment, he was holding the chopsticks in his hand, so he had to fumble around to get the rice in his bowl. Yu Lily ignored him. After eating her dessert, she leaned back in her seat and took out her cell phone. When she picked it up, she realized that Yi Qianqian had called her several times. She didn't know when the phone had been set to silent, but it didn't even vibrate. As soon as she picked it up, Yu Lily replied to her WeChat message, telling her that a friend had asked her out and that she was having supper. He took a picture and sent it over. Yi Qianqian immediately sent him the middle finger. After drinking a bowl of soup and eating a few mouthfuls of rice, Oh Ming put down his chopsticks. Yu Lily was playing with her phone, but when he put down his chopsticks, she immediately noticed. He glanced at her and asked casually, "Are you full?" Oh Ming's expression was the same as usual as he said, "Plain rice, tasteless. There's food in front of you." They were all Oh Ming's favorite dishes, and they were all exquisitely prepared. Oh Ming's eyes were unfocused. He looked ahead and said calmly, "I can't see it." Chapter 1191. Yu Lily's tone was very harsh and full of disgust. When Oh Ming heard that, his expression was still indifferent, and his eyes were empty. He said, "In that case, I'll look like a fool." "You're not a fool. You're blind." Yu Lily put down her phone and put her hands on the table. She said seriously, this privilege is not only for fools. Blind people can also have it, so you can rest assured. Oh Ming's lips were tightened, and his hands were hanging by his side. He asked, can't you feed me? When Yu Lily heard that, she laughed out loud as if she had heard a joke. She asked, feed you? I invited you to dinner and let you stay in a hotel because of our past relationship. Mr. O, don't push your luck. Otherwise, you'll really have to sleep on the street today. Then I'll sleep on the street, Oh Ming said as if he had accepted his fate. He looked at Yu Lily and asked, will you accompany me? Yu Lily heard that and smiled coldly. She looked away and looked out the window. It was very late, but as the busiest area in the area, there were still a lot of people coming and going. The street lights illuminated many people. On the side of the road, a homeless man could be clearly seen lying in front of a closed shop. You're down and out, but I'm not. Why should I accompany you? Yu Lily's voice was indescribably cold. She looked out the window and curled her lips cruelly. She said, in your current situation, how are you like the O Ming of the past? You have no money, you're blind, and you're disabled. You still want me to serve you? Why? O Ming's hands were hanging by his side, and he slightly tightened. His lips were tightened, and his eyes blinked twice, but they were still unfocused and empty. There was no brilliance of the past, no brilliance of the past. In the words of you and your mother, I'm with you because of your money, your beauty, and your power. You're blind now, and it's only a matter of time before your family's company fails. I'm not interested in wasting time with you. Yu Lily's eyes gradually turned red as she said that. That's right. Lowering her head slightly, Yu Lily picked up the teacup and drank 2 mouthfuls. However, when the water entered his throat, it was as if his eyes were being burned. Yu Lily's eyes began to burn uncontrollably, and tears welled up in her eyes silently. Oh Ming narrowed his eyes slightly and said with certainty, you're not that kind of person. I am. Yu Lily replied without hesitation. She snorted coldly and ran her fingers through the stray strands of hair on her cheek. Her voice was arrogant and full of pride as she said, I've been one for a long time. You've already seen through me, haven't you? His voice was calm and composed, but the watery light couldn't help but spread out. Yu Lily wiped her eyes and laughed at herself. Fortunately, Oh Ming couldn't see it. Otherwise, it would be awkward. She was the one who dumped him, so why was she the one crying? She doesn't like you at all. She just lacks someone to serve her wholeheartedly. You can't just throw yourself at her for nothing. How despicable. When he needs you, you are whatever you say. When he doesn't need you anymore, what do you say you are? Chapter 1192. However, Oh Ming sat in his seat and didn't move. Yu Lily stood opposite him and looked down at him. The man in front of her was wearing a long down jacket that didn't suit him. One of his hands was hung around his neck, and his lips were tightly pursed. He looked serious. At that moment, he seemed to have heard Yu Lily's words, and his face became even more tense. I'm hungry, Oh Ming said with a straight face. Then eat. Yu Lily sat down and looked at the man in front of her. She had no intention of going up to feed him. I'll wait for you for 10 minutes. Are you in a hurry? Yes. Yu Lily said with her eyes wide open. Then I won't eat. Let's go. Oh Ming stood up and groped his way out of his seat. When Yu Lily saw that, she was shocked and quickly asked, aren't you still hungry? Aren't you in a hurry? Oh Ming asked. I'm in a hurry, and you eat your meal. That's not a conflict, right? When Oh Ming heard that, he calmly said, you don't have time to feed me. I can't eat by myself. Yu Lily was speechless. He's actually so self-righteous. Should I be the one to feed him? She should be the one to owe him? Yu Lily laughed angrily. Oh Ming, how can you be so shameless? When Oh Ming heard that, he didn't continue the conversation and said, "Let's go." When Yu Lily heard that, she looked at the exquisite dishes on the table and said regretfully, "There are so many dishes, and you haven't even touched a single chopstick. What a waste." Oh Ming stopped in his tracks and turned his head to look at Yu Lily's face. The eyes of the man in front of her were empty and without focus. There was no light in them. Inexplicably, when Yu Lily met his eyes, she felt a little guilty. She knew that he couldn't see, but she felt as if she had been seen through. Annoyed, Yu Lily sat down and picked up her chopsticks. She picked up some food and put it in her bowl. As she ate, she mumbled, "Damn B*****. I ordered so much food for nothing." Yu Lily buried herself in the work. In a place where she couldn't see, Oh Ming's lips quietly raised, but it was fleeting, leaving no trace. Oh Ming fumbled around and sat down again. He sat quietly. When Yu Lily saw this, she was even more furious with this guy. She stepped forward and roughly grabbed his hand, stuffing a spoon into his palm. Then, she put some food into his bowl with her chopsticks and said, "Eat it yourself." Oh Ming put the spoon aside, spread out his palm, and said calmly, "I want chopsticks." Yu Lily gritted her teeth. She picked up the chopsticks and shoved them into his hand. Oh Ming slowly ate the food in his bowl. His movements were slow, but his chopsticks never missed. He ate for more than 10 minutes. Yu Lily continued to put food in his bowl several times before Oh Ming slowly stopped. Seeing that he was almost done, Yu Lily called for the bill. As soon as she said that, Oh Ming said, "I want to eat ice cream." He added, "Chocolate flavored." Yu Lily glared at him and said fiercely, "Eat until you die." Although that was what she said, she still asked the waiter to bring an ice cream over. After paying the bill, Oh Ming couldn't hold the ice cream because his hands were injured. Therefore, the heavy responsibility naturally fell on Yu Lily's hands. Chapter 1193. It was very fragrant and sweet. Yu Lily liked ice cream, especially vanilla and chocolate-flavored ice cream. Yu Lily used the spoon to scoop up the ice cream and put it into her mouth. She blinked and pulled Oh Ming's arm to hold hers. Then, they walked out. Oh Ming's footsteps staggered, but he quickly steadied himself and followed Yu Lily out. As soon as they got out, the freezing cold feeling came back again. Yu Lily held the ice cream in her hand. As she ate it, she shivered and gasped for air. Oh Ming seemed to sense something. He tightened his grip on Yu Lily's arm and asked, "Where's my ice cream? Why are you eating ice cream in such cold weather? I'll throw it away if my hand freezes." Yu Lily lied through her teeth as she walked out. Anyway, he couldn't see, and he wasn't the one paying. Yu Lily didn't feel guilty at all for lying to a blind man. However, Yu Lily didn't notice that the moment she said that, Oh Ming's eyes flashed with a smile. "Liar. It's true." Yu Lily restrained herself a little and put her hand down. "Why are you eating ice cream in such cold weather? You didn't take it with you. You deserve to be thrown away." "Liar." Oh Ming repeated this sentence and reached out to touch Yu Lily's hand. Yu Lily quickly put the spoon in the ice cream bowl and let him touch her hand. At that moment, Yu Lily didn't feel guilty at all. She said impatiently, "I said I didn't. Are you afraid that I'll take it for myself?" Oh Ming's lips seemed to curve as he said, "You're very likely to do such a thing. I'm not that kind of person." "You are." Yu Lily glared at him and pushed him. "Do you mean that I'm lying to a blind man? Am I such a heartless person?" With that, she subconsciously hid the ice cream behind her back. "It's up to you whether you believe me or not. Let go." Oh Ming's lips curved, but then he returned to his original state. With some regret, he said, "I haven't tried eating ice cream after a meal." That was Yu Lily's old habit. She had gradually changed it. Hearing Oh Ming's words, Yu Lily suddenly felt guilty. But, so what? The blind man needed someone to serve him. Did he want her to feed him ice cream? Dream on. In her heart, Yu Lily scooped a bigger mouthful of ice cream and stuffed it into her mouth. When she turned around and saw Oh Ming's regretful and aggrieved expression, she felt even more pleased. Serves you right. Yu Lily brought the blind man back to the 5-star hotel. She took out his identity card and gave it to the receptionist. A single room. I said, if you don't live with me, I won't live with you. Oh Ming repeated what he had said countless times. I can't see anything by myself. I'll be scared. When Oh Ming said this, there was a hint of bitterness in his voice. In the ears of others, it sounded even more like Yu Lily had abandoned him. Yu Lily was speechless. She took out her ID card and said, I'm staying here too. Let's get a king-sized room. Okay. The receptionist smiled and looked at Oh Ming and then at Yu Lily with a smile on her face. After registering and paying, Yu Lily led the blind man to find a room. Chapter 1194. Yu Lily glanced sideways at his tightly clenched fists, and her eyes darkened. She turned her head away and looked straight ahead. The phone vibrated slightly, and Yu Lily picked it up. It was a message from Shinjilia. Shinjilia, where are you going to meet your friends so late at night? Do you want me to pick you up? Yu Lily held the message in her hand and looked at the line of words. She knew it was Yi Qianqian who had told him. After thinking about it, Yu Lily replied, No, I'll go back later. Shinjilia replied quickly, It's so late. It's not safe for you to be alone. I'll pick you up. Where are you? Yu Lily frowned and replied with a bitter face, It's really not necessary. I'll go back later. I'll tell you when I get there. It won't take long. Oh Ming's arms slightly tightened, and his voice was a little low as he asked, Not yet? Is it that far? Only then did Yu Lily raise her head, look around, and find that they had arrived. She took out the key card and opened the door. After pulling Oh Ming in, the phone rang again. Shinjilia, well, you have to be careful when you're alone. Try to go to a crowded place. Yu Lily's heart warmed, and her face unconsciously softened. She sent an emoji that said, Brother, what time is it? How can there be a crowded place? Shinjilia. Shinjilia, that's not good. I must go and bring you back. Where are you? Yu Lily sent another emoji that said she didn't look and then didn't reply. Oh Ming stood behind her the whole time. He didn't move, nor did he speak. Yu Lily glanced at him and pulled him to the bed. She let his hand touch the edge of the bed and said, This is the bed. Then she took him to the bathroom and counted the steps. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps. 10 steps, this is the bathroom. Yeah, Oh Ming responded faintly and said, I want to go to the bathroom. Go ahead. Yu Lily opened the door to the bathroom for him and pushed him in. Take care of it yourself. However, just as Yu Lily was about to shake his hand off and leave, she was pulled back by his large palm. He asked, You're not going to help me? Please, do you need help to go to the bathroom? Don't you know how to take off your own pants? Yu Lily rolled her eyes at him and flung his hand away. But before she could shake him off, he yanked her forcefully and pressed her against the bathroom door. He held her palm with one hand and placed it in front of her chest. His body weight firmly pressed her down. Yu Lily was shocked. Caught off guard, Oh Ming's knee was already in between her legs. His face was less than 2 centimeters away from hers. Such a sudden scene made Yu Lily inexplicably feel suffocated. Subconsciously, she wanted to push him away. Yu Lily frowned and was about to yell at him. Suddenly, he lowered his head and sealed her lips. Without any explanation, he went straight into her mouth. His movements were domineering and wild, with some inexplicable fierceness. He sucked her tongue with a bit of punishment. Hot breaths intertwined with each other, and the temperature of the space between their bodies climbed inch by inch. Yu Lily was even more furious, and her sense of humiliation was rising. This bastard, what did he take me for? Chapter 1195. No, maybe he's not even as good as a whore. Even if he's a whore, he should have dignity and integrity. A woman like me might just be a plaything in his heart. When he was happy, he would give her some sweets, coax her to say that he would marry her, and tell her that he would love her deeply. When he was unhappy, he would immediately show his true colors. Just like his mother, he guarded his own land, for fear that others would covet it. As long as she got a little closer, they would be like hedgehogs, hurting people who tried to invade. Such a man, who could afford to have him, his kiss was getting deeper and deeper. Heavily and deeply. In the past, Yu Lily would have given him a happy reaction. But now, Yu Lily's heart was only left with pain. As the kiss deepened, the pain became more and more hysterical. Her remaining hand pressed against his stomach. Yu Lily pushed him away, and her breathing became more and more heavy. Oh Ming released her lips, but his hand didn't move. He sighed and said, "The taste of ice cream." Yu Lily's eyes were even more hot. She pushed him away, raised her hand, and slapped his face hard. But at the moment when it was about to fall, Yu Lily stopped her hand in midair. In front of her, Oh Ming's eyes were empty and unfocused. He just looked forward, as if he knew nothing about what was happening. Her hand was suspended in midair, but in the end, it didn't fall. Yu Lily bit her lip, sneered, and pushed him away. She said sarcastically, "Since you are so hungry, why don't I help you find a special service?" When Oh Ming heard that, his face darkened. He reached out with one hand to pull her, but Yu Lily avoided it. Yu Lily glanced at his hand and sneered. "Do your parents know that you can still be so evil when you are blind?" Then, she turned and walked straight to the door. But before she had time to open the door, she heard rapid footsteps behind her. Oh Ming seemed to want to grab her hand, but he miscalculated. As a result, he grabbed the sweater behind her with one hand. But it was such a grab that Oh Ming's mood obviously calmed down, and he shouted, "Yu Lily." With her back to him, Yu Lily looked at him coldly and stopped to pull his hand away. However, Oh Ming's grip became tighter and tighter. He tugged at her clothes and walked toward her. Yu Lily straightened her back and pretended to be calm as she turned to look at the man behind her. There was no light in his eyes, nor was there any trace of his usual pride. Oh Ming was like a child who was dependent on an adult. Oh Ming grabbed her sweater and begged helplessly, "Don't go." Yu Lily's heart shook. It was like a giant metal bell in the wind, and rain was suddenly struck by lightning. The big bell suddenly made a huge noise, causing her heart to feel numb and sore. Unable to maintain the expression on her face, Yu Lily's eyes became dry, and tears began to flow. But then, Yu Lily immediately reacted. He wiped his eyes with his hand and tried to sound normal. His voice was cold as he said, "Mr. O, I only have one piece of clothing. Please leave one for me. It's very cold outside." But Oh Ming didn't let go. He begged, "Then stay, don't go." Chapter 1196. Yu Lily's voice was stiff as she looked down at his hand. She tried to sound calm and said, "Since we've broken up, I don't intend to be entangled with you anymore. If the police hadn't asked me to take you away, I wouldn't have bothered with such a troublesome person like you. Please let go, Mr. O." But Oh Ming didn't speak. He silently grabbed her clothes and pulled them tighter. Yu Lily pursed her lips, and her voice was a little hoarse. She chuckled and said, "It seems that you really want me to run around naked." As she said that, she started to lift her clothes. Oh Ming didn't expect Yu Lily to do that. He shouted, "Yu Lily, what are you doing?" Yu Lily ignored him. She lifted her clothes and quickly took them off. The cold air suddenly hit her, and she was so cold that she couldn't breathe. Wearing only her underwear, Yu Lily's footsteps were loud as she walked toward the door. Oh Ming couldn't stand it anymore. He held her sweater tighter and tighter. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Wait a minute." Yu Lily stopped and turned to look at him. She only had a bra on her upper body and thin black pencil pants on her lower body. What was the difference between going out like this and running naked? Oh Ming gritted his teeth and threw the sweater in front of him. You can go. Then he seemed to remember something and reached for the zipper of the jacket. And this, I'll give it back to you. Oh Ming took off his jacket and tossed it in front of him. Then he turned around and carefully felt his way toward the bed. Seeing Oh Ming like that, Yu Lily took a deep breath. Looking at his back, she finally picked up the sweater, put it on, and walked out. The door closed with a soft creak. Oh Ming sat on the bed, and his eyes were red and blank. As Yu Lily walked out, she searched for her contacts on her phone. She found Xiao Ziqing's number and dialed it. Sure enough, it couldn't be reached. Even Oh Ming's cell phone had blocked her cell phone number, let alone her own cell phone. The extent to which Xiao Ziqing disliked her was deeper than Yu Lily had imagined. Yu Lily smiled bitterly and went out to find a public phone to call Xiao Ziqing. It was past midnight, but when the call was made, the other side was not asleep yet. She sounded very energetic, but Xiao Ziqing sounded a little tired. Hello, how are you? Hello, Mrs. O. Xiao Ziqing was clearly taken aback when she heard the voice. I'm Yu Lily. Yu Lily knew that she definitely knew who she was, so she quickly cut to the chase and said, I'm currently in XX City in Fujian Province. Your son ran around here today and was taken to the police station. I later brought him out and settled him in a hotel. After telling him the name of the hotel and the room number, Yu Lily cut to the chase and said, You don't have to thank me too much. Take him away quickly. In the future, please keep your son in check and don't let him pester me again. Xiao Ziqing held the phone in her hand. She was so emotional that tears finally rolled down her cheeks. She shouted, What do you mean by this? My son was doing fine at home. Why did he suddenly run off to Fujian? You must have brought him there, right? Chapter 1197. The condescension and disdain in her words were so obvious that it was shocking. This woman. How dare she throw a tantrum at me? Who gave her the guts? Who gave her the ability? Xiao Ziqing was annoyed. Just as she was about to say something, Yu Lily had already hung up. Xiao Ziqing stomped her foot in anger. This was the only woman in her life who had dared to point at her and scold her. But, at least, she had found her son. Xiao Ziqing called her husband excitedly. In her heart, she had cursed Yu Lily 1,000 times. Unexpectedly, Oh Huajin didn't have much of a reaction. He said, I got it. I've already sent someone to bring him back. Don't worry. Go to sleep. Xiao Ziqing panicked and yelled, How can I fall asleep before our son is back? It's fine. I've already sent Lao Wen. Don't you trust him? Xiao Ziqing was speechless. She didn't give up and asked, Do you know who told me about our son? Who? It was that woman. Yu Lily. Xiao Ziqing gritted her teeth. That woman tricked our son to such a faraway place. What is she up to? When Oh Huajin heard that, he felt helpless. He sighed and said, Xiao Qiao, you've wronged that girl. She can't even get through to our son's phone. How could she have tricked him to go there? Furthermore, you know Xiao O's character. If he wasn't willing, who would have been able to force him to do it? Xiao Ziqing gritted her teeth. He was right, but she was still displeased. She asked, Why are you speaking up for her? Xiao Qiao. When did you become so unreasonable? Xiao O has grown up. As his parents, we can't interfere too much with his choices. You should just leave him be. When Xiao Ziqing heard that, she felt wronged. She retorted angrily, How can you say that about me? Are you still my husband? With that, she hung up the phone in a huff and called Wen Fenglin. Wen Fenglin seemed to be busy. It took him a long time to answer the call. When he answered, Xiao Ziqing couldn't wait to ask, Lao Wen, did you go to fetch my son? When Wen Fenglin heard that, he chuckled. How did you know? Did Lao O tell you? These words were tantamount to tacit approval. Xiao Ziqing sighed a breath of relief and said, "Yes, who else could it be other than old O? Since you've gone, I'm relieved. You must bring Lil O back." "Yes, I'll definitely complete the task," Wen Fenglin replied with a smile and quickly hung up. However, after hanging up the phone, he stretched his back and lay on the bed. When Yu Lily returned to the hotel, it was almost 1:30. The room was dark, and Yi Qianqian was fast asleep. Yu Lily carefully locked the door, found some clothes, and after taking a shower, she carefully crawled into bed. "Where did you go to fool around? Why are you back so late?" Yu Lily hadn't expected Yi Qianqian to suddenly speak. She was shocked. He kicked Yi Qianqian and rebuked her. "Don't you know that you can scare someone to death?" Yi Qianqian pouted and flipped over. "So, where did you go?" "I went to eat with a friend. I just finished eating. I sent him back first before coming back." "Male or female?" Chapter 1198. It was a silent night. Yu Lily didn't wake up until 9 o'clock. When she turned over, she found that Yi Qianqian was nowhere to be found. He picked up his phone and opened WeChat. He immediately saw the message that Yi Qianqian had left for him. "Sisai, we're eating at the restaurant downstairs. Come down when you wake up." It was sent 5 minutes ago. Looking at the message, Yu Lily subconsciously thought of O Ming. O Ming didn't seem to have any money on him. Apart from the hotel, she didn't seem to have left him anything. He didn't even have clothes. Then, Yu Lily remembered that she had already called his mother yesterday. By now, she had probably been picked up. Yu Lily got up and yawned, feeling a little funny. Worrying about nothing. After washing up, they went downstairs. After Yu Lily found them, they had breakfast together, and then she led them to the surrounding scenic spots. In the morning, they went to a beach. The fishy and salty sea breeze blew over, causing them to shiver from the cold. Fortunately, they were fully prepared today, and their bodies were all wrapped up tightly. Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian took off their shoes and walked to the beach. Looking at the ebb and flow of the tide, Yu Lily wanted to go down, but she was afraid that it would be too cold. In the end, Yi Qianqian dragged him into the water and stepped on him. The cold made him feel good. Yu Lily felt so stimulated that her bladder was about to explode, and her whole body trembled. Old Mrs. Shen looked into the distance and shouted, "Lily, the water is too cold. Don't go in. It's not good for your health." Yu Lily's heart warmed. She smiled brightly and waved at old Mrs. Shen. "It's all right. It's not that cold. Come on, it's time to eat." Old Mrs. Shen took out a huge backpack. "Come on, let's have a picnic." Although the old lady was not young, she often had the temperament of a child. In the morning, when I heard that there was going to be a picnic, I was so excited that I almost jumped up. When Yu Lily saw this, she quickly pulled Yi Qianqian onto the shore, wiped her feet, put on her shoes, and ran over. As soon as she sat down, Yu Lily's phone rang. The caller was from the city, and the number was from a landline. Yu Lily took a look and seemed to have guessed something, but she wasn't so sure. After all, O Ming's mother should have taken him home by now, right? Yu Lily hesitated before picking up the phone. "Hello? Hello, may I ask if you're Miss Yu?" It was a very professional female voice. Yu Lily replied, "I am." "Wait a moment." Then there was a commotion on the other side, followed by a man's voice. "You." Without a doubt, it was that person. Yu Lily frowned and looked around. She stood up and walked a little further away. Her tone wasn't very pleasant as she asked, "What do you want?" The man on the other end of the line didn't seem to notice Yu Lily's impatience and said calmly, "I'm hungry, and I don't have money to eat." "What does it have to do with me? You're the one who brought me here." "Of course it's none of your business. You registered your ID card yesterday. I can sue you for abandoning a disabled person." Oh Ming was confident and didn't look like he was begging for help at all. Abandoning a disabled person? Yu Lily's lips twitched. It was obvious that she couldn't accept this sentence. Then go ahead and sue me. Anyway, I called your mother and let your mother pay for you. Chapter 1199. Oh Ming's words carried a tinge of grievance and resentment. He sounded so pitiful. She had thought that he wouldn't be able to accept the fact that he couldn't see. Who knew that he would accept it so quickly? He kept calling her a disabled person. That was even worse than her. Hasn't your mother gone to look for you? Yu Lily clearly didn't believe him. Based on Xiao Ziqing's protective nature, how could she not have arrived by now? Oh Ming could hear the suspicion in her voice. He shook his head and said, "No." "Why? Are you sure that you called my mother? You're not lying to me, are you?" Before Yu Lily could speak, Oh Ming continued, "Lying to a disabled person? Yu Lily, can you be any more beastly?" Yu Lily was speechless. "Come quickly. I'm borrowing the hotel's phone to make the call. If you don't come, I'll starve to death here." With that, he hung up. EXM. He hung up? Yu Lily suddenly felt a surge of anger. She was so angry that she laughed. What right does this guy have to order me around? He was the one who chased me away, and he was also the one who pestered me. What right does he have? If I starve to death, I'll starve to death. It's as if I've never been hungry before. Since we've already broken up, why can't he be more straightforward? He's done it once, twice, and now he's sticking to me again. Even I feel cheap. I've already informed his mother. Whether he lives or dies, I don't care. Yu Lily's eyes darkened. She turned her phone off and returned to her friends' group to continue her picnic. Shinjilie saw her obviously angry expression and handed her a box of biscuits. As he ate, he asked, "Who is it?" "Nothing." Yu Lily picked up a biscuit and took a bite. She felt a little strange. As she sipped her drink, she asked, "Could it be the friend who called you out last night? What kind of friend is this? Why are you so angry?" It was just a casual question, but the moment it left her mouth, Yu Lily's expression darkened even more. When Yi Qianqian saw the expression on Yu Lily's face, she immediately shut up and said, "Pretend I never said anything." "No." Yu Lily bit the biscuit and took a drink from behind her. When old Mrs. Shen saw that Yu Lily was clearly in a bad mood, she quickly changed the topic and started discussing where they were going to visit that afternoon. After the four of them finished their picnic, they packed up their things and took a car to another famous scenic spot. During that time, Yu Lily didn't turn on her computer even once. However, everyone could see that Yu Lily was absent-minded the whole afternoon. Shinjilie thought that she was in a bad mood, so he led the women to a dessert shop. I heard that when a woman is in a bad mood, she'll feel much better after eating desserts. Shinjilie handed the menu to Yu Lily and asked with a smile, "How about ice cream?" However, when Yu Lily heard those words, she felt even more uncomfortable. He picked up the phone and turned it on. More than 10 missed calls popped up. There were mobile numbers, landline numbers, and without exception, they were all from the same city. This guy. Don't tell me he hasn't eaten yet? Looking at the time, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. If he hadn't eaten for the entire day, he would definitely be famished. What if he starved to death? Chapter 1200. Yu Lily was shocked and immediately covered the phone. When she turned her head, she saw Shinjilie's doubtful gaze, but there was a hint of understanding in it. She felt even more guilty. Everyone knew that she and Oh Ming had broken up. Old Mrs. Shen had heard every word that Oh Ming had said to her. If she knew that the caller was Oh Ming, it would be awkward. Yu Lily shook her head. A friend. Although she said that, she still felt guilty. Was this considered a lie? It was a lie, but it was also a white lie, when she turned her head and saw Yi Qianqian's disbelieving gaze, she felt extremely guilty. She picked up the phone and said, "Wait for me. I'll make a call." Under the strange gazes of the three of them, Yu Lily walked out of the dessert shop and called the landline number immediately. The phone was quickly picked up. "Hello, Sheraton Resort Hotel." Sure enough, Yu Lily thought about her words and said, "Hello, my surname is Yu." Before Yu Lily could finish her self-introduction, the receptionist interrupted and said, "Miss Yu, are you looking for Mr. O?" "Yes. He is now in the lobby of the hotel. The room he stayed in last night automatically checked out. Please come and pick him up quickly." Hearing that, Yu Lily felt even more guilty. The receptionist noticed that Yu Lily was silent, so she continued, "It seems that Mr. O hasn't eaten or drunk anything today. The staff here brought him water and food, but he didn't touch them." This guy, Yu Lily's heart ached when she heard that. She asked, "Did no one come to the hotel to look for him today?" "No, he only looked for you today." "No one else came to look for him," the receptionist said. "I see. Thank you." "You're welcome. Please come quickly. Mr. O's clothes are too thin. It's really inconvenient for a blind person." At the end of the sentence, Yu Lily could clearly hear the rebuke in her voice. Yu Lily's heart ached. After responding, she walked back into the dessert shop. Under their strange gazes, she picked up her bag and said, "I'm going out for a while. I'll be back later." "Are you going to see the friend from last night?" Old Mrs. Shen looked at Yu Lily and said with a straight face, "Whether it's a boy or a girl, why don't you let the youngest accompany you?" After old Mrs. Shen finished speaking, Shen Jilie stood up as if it was his duty to do so. "That's right. I'll go with you. I'm not familiar with this place, so it'll be more convenient to have a man with me." Yu Lily knew that they were concerned about her, but the place she was going and the people she was going to meet made her feel awkward. How could she let Shen Jilie follow her? Yu Lily bit the bullet and shook her head. She smiled awkwardly and said, "There's no need. I'll be back in a moment. You guys go ahead and eat first." With that, Yu Lily walked away quickly. Old Mrs. Shen looked at Yu Lily's anxious footsteps, and her doubts deepened. Shen Jilie stood up and said, "I'd better go take a look. You guys can order something to eat." "Huh?" Yi Qianqian's eyes widened. "Stalking? That's not a good idea, is it?" Chapter 12:01. Shen Jilie reached out and knocked on Yi Qianqian's head. Then, he picked up the coat on the chair and said, "I'm going. You wait here." With that, he followed behind Yu Lily. Yu Lily didn't notice that Shen Jilie was following her. After taking a taxi, she went to the hotel where O Ming was. When she arrived at the hotel, it was almost 5:30. As soon as Yu Lily entered, she saw O Ming in the reception area of the left lobby. At that moment, O Ming was wearing only the thin purple silk pajamas that he had worn the day before. At that moment, he was sitting on the sofa with a man sitting next to him. There was a radio on the table, and it was playing opera in a low volume. When Yu Lily saw him, her heart, which had been worried for a long time, suddenly relaxed. Walking quickly toward that place, Yu Lily's anger was getting bigger and bigger. Her footsteps became heavier and heavier. Facing the man in front of her who had no focus in his eyes, she was angry that he didn't live up to her expectations. In a huff, Yu Lily took off her down jacket and threw it at O Ming's face. When the man next to her saw this scene, he looked at Yu Lily with a smile and asked, "Miss, are you the young man's girlfriend?" "Yes." Yu Lily didn't answer, but O Ming spoke first. The man stood up and patted his thigh. After picking up the radio, he said with a sigh, "Then I'm leaving too. My wife is still waiting for me." "Thank you." O Ming thanked him sincerely. When Yu Lily saw this, she smiled at the man and said, "Thank you. I'm sorry for the trouble." The man waved his hand and said, "What can't a young couple talk about? Your man's eyesight is bad. You went too far by throwing him into the hotel. You can't do this again in the future. Yu Lily was embarrassed and quickly explained, he is not my man. But as she spoke, she saw Shinjilia walking toward her not far behind the man. Even if Yu Lily had 10 brains, she would never have thought that Shinjilia would follow her. Looking at Shinjilia's steady steps, Yu Lily's face suddenly became hot. Yu Lily could imagine the look on her face as the temperature hit her. When Shinjilia saw Yu Lily's face suddenly turn red, he found it a little funny. At the same time, he looked at her meaningfully and asked, "Why didn't you wait for me?" Yu Lily felt even more embarrassed. Before she could think of a reply, Shinjilia walked up and pulled the down jacket that was covering Oh Ming's body. He said, "How can you wear women's clothes?" However, he was unable to pull that piece of clothing back even though he was pulling it like that. Oh Ming tugged on the down jacket. His eyes were a little hollow as he looked forward, but his face was indescribably gloomy. He asked, "Why are you here? Why can't I be here?" Shinjilia's eyes turned cold, and he forcefully pulled the clothes over to him. Oh Ming didn't have much strength, especially after starving for so long. How could he compete with Shinjilia in brute force? Chapter 1202. However, Oh Ming didn't take it. With a wave of his hand, the down jacket fell onto the sofa beside him. He said, "Yu Lily, give me the jacket." When Shinjilia saw this, he laughed and asked, "Oh Ming, can you see me?" As he spoke, he stretched out 5 fingers and waved them in front of him. "Are you really blind?" Although Shinjilia was teasing Oh Ming, Yu Lily's heart suddenly felt very uncomfortable. She reached out and pulled Shinjilia back. In a low voice, she said, "Enough. Oh Ming can't see now. Don't bully him." When Shinjilia heard that, his eyes became even colder. But then, as if he had no choice, he went forward to pick up the down jacket and put it on Oh Ming. However, Oh Ming's face became even darker. He pushed Shinjilia away and coldly said, "Don't touch me." Shinjilia took a step back and looked at Yu Lily helplessly. He shrugged and said, "I didn't bully him. Now, the blind man is bullying me. I'm not the one bullying the blind man." Oh Ming stood up and reached out as if he wanted to touch Yu Lily. However, Shinjilia suddenly stood in front of him and said, "Why are you sitting here without any clothes on? Aren't you cold? You still have the mood to come out for a vacation in your condition? Isn't your mother worried about you?" Although his tone was calm and even full of concern, in Oh Ming's ears, there was only sarcasm and mockery. Oh Ming gritted his teeth. His face was dark, but his voice was calm. He said, "Shinjilia, what are you doing here?" "I came with Lily." Shinjilia's words were full of laughter, but there was an indescribable sense of pride and provocation in them. "So, she asked you to help, didn't she?" Oh Ming stood up. Under Shinjilia's surprised gaze, he picked up Shinjilia's jacket and covered it with one hand. He said, "I've been hungry for a long time. Take me to eat." Oh Ming's expression was much calmer than before. Such an attitude was beyond Shinjilia's expectations. Shinjilia looked at Oh Ming with interest. He put his hands in his pockets and asked, "What do you want to eat?" "Yu Lily, what do you want to eat?" Oh Ming asked. Yu Lily was suddenly called. She was stunned for a moment and then reacted. "Aren't you the one who has been hungry all day?" "I'm not hungry. Let's go." Shinjilia tugged on Oh Ming's shirt and said, "Since we don't know what to eat, let's go to Chongqing Hot Pot together." "No, that's too spicy." Oh Ming had been hungry for a whole day, so he couldn't eat such spicy food all at once. His stomach wasn't very good to begin with. If he ate such a stimulating thing, he definitely wouldn't be able to take it. Yu Lily's words were almost blurted out. After she said it, she realized that something was wrong. Shinjilia looked over and said seriously, "It's okay. My stomach is much better now." When Yu Lily heard that, she knew that Shinjilia might have misunderstood something, but she was happy to go along with what he said. She smiled awkwardly and said, even so, you can't eat it. If you eat too much, your stomach won't be able to handle it. Shinjilia smiled and nodded his head. I'll do as you say. However, there were bound to be people who were happy and people who were worried. Hearing their ambiguous words, Ming clenched his teeth, straightened his back, and tensed up. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.